across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Past 6, Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan in for the brilliant Jeremy Kyle. Today and tomorrow, a packed show for you. What about this, folks? Breaking as we come on air. Bend it like Burnham. The King of the North is the King of the U-turn as Prime Ministerial hopeful Andy Burnham rose back on his ambitions to rejoin the European Union and now says he will stick to Rachel Reeves's fiscal rules. But does that mean higher taxes for you and I to fund his socialist agenda? Meanwhile, children at school are being taught you cannot be racist to white people. And is Nigel Farage about to cause the mother of all political upsets and win the Makerfield by-election? Now, this show is all about your opinions, and we're going to put your views on air, on the radio and on the telly. You can hear us on DAB+, in-app and online. You can see the show. Head over to YouTube, search Talk, and up we pop. And I've got a simple question for you at 4 minutes past 6 in the morning. Do you want Andy Burnham to be your next Prime Minister? 03444991000. Text the word talk and your message to 87222. Leave us a voice note. Producer Christian loves a voice note. And we're bringing some weekend breakfast magic to the show today because Dave the engineer is pressing the buttons and Tommy is taking your calls. Do you want Andy Burnham to be your next Prime Minister? 03444991000. Directing, put my teeth back in. Directing our TV output, the wonderful Luke as well. So much to get through. Let's talk. Not defecting, that's just Labour MPs, isn't it? Let's start with today's front pages. We begin with the Mirror. Starmer's defiant message. PM rejects call to set out departure timetable and is up for the fight. But Andy Burnham says he will lead Labour change as he rules out a Brexit rerun. I won't walk away, says the Prime Minister. Are we stuck with Starmer? Would he be the lesser of two evils? The Guardian newspaper, Burnham, Labour must change to regain trust. Deadly outbreaks, more frequent and damaging. This is in relation to a shocking development. It's the awful Ebola outbreak, which has claimed over 100 lives in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Farage house purchase under fresh scrutiny. I'll be putting that to Layla Cunningham in Call Cunningham later in the morning. It's quite interesting, this story around Nigel Farage, because he received £5 million from a Bitcoin billionaire. No problem, he wasn't a sitting MP at that point. He didn't have to declare it, but he's on record as saying that it was the I'm a Celebrity money from ITV that paid for his house. Well, his financial records would suggest otherwise. So is there a case to answer there? The Times newspaper, Burnham far ahead of Starmer in Labour vote. 2/3 want a new Prime Minister by the next election, and Lammy to raise criminal age for children. Daily Mail, Labour's civil war, slippery Burnham's 2 U-turns in one day. He changes his mind on Britain rejoining the EU to stand in a pro-Brexit area, and now he says he'll stick with Reeves' fiscal rules, meaning tax hikes. And last but not least for now, the Daily Telegraph. Why do our politicians insist on running? It's true. Whenever you're about to be Prime Minister, you are photographed or filmed out jogging, are you not? We've seen it with Boris. We're now seeing it with Andy Burnham. Bend it like Burnham, the King of the North. Now King of the U-turn. Get used to it, folks. All the King's men. This is Alan Titchmarsh and David Beckham working very closely with King Charles in relation to natural causes and the climate. And Starmer sabotages Burnham on Brexit. Prime Minister says debate could happen as challenger seeks to keep Leave voters on side. Reacting to the big stories of the day, live in the studio, Matt Vickers, MP and Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning. Plenty going on. Not a quiet week.
Most definitely. And Andy Burnham, I mean, there's a joke about Andy Burnham, isn't there? which is a Corbynite, a Blairite, and a Brownite going to the pub, and the barman says, "What do you want to drink, Andy?" And this is what Andy Burnham is. He's all things to all men, isn't he?
That's it. Well, nobody's pinned him down. Nobody knows quite what he stands for. I mean, somebody said to me the other day, maybe the answer to the country's problems is just more yellow buses. That might solve everything. That's all we know about Andy Burnham. He's a guy who's on it for the buses. He's northern. I mean, to be fair, people from the north tend to be quite sound, don't they? So maybe he's got something going on there. But yeah, I'm not quite sure what he stands for. I don't think anybody does, other than the fact he is not Keir Starmer. Those bizarre polls, though, you saw the polls that see him beating Starmer. That wasn't the story there. The story was actually the fact that Starmer would beat Streeting. Just 4% of Labour voters said they would vote for Streeting versus 30-something% voting to keep Starmer. That is insane. How unpopular do you have to be less popular than Keir Starmer?
And Streeting is unpopular with the membership because he's too right-wing. Is that essentially the top and bottom of it?
I think more realistic, but maybe he's just less popular. Actually, when you see Starmer, I don't think Starmer, he doesn't really stand for anything. That's part of the problem we've got in government. He arrived.
Yeah.
He's the Prime Minister of the country, isn't really doing anything other than spending huge amounts of money on pay rises for unionised industries and increasing that welfare bill. He doesn't stand for anything. You can't really be offended by him other than the fact he's just a failure and fails to judge anything correctly.
Well, is Andy Burnham overrated, and will Labour voters find that out should he become Prime Minister?
Well, the people of Makerfield might be about to find that out. We might be about to find that out as a country. I think it's quite a tall order for him to get elected in Makerfield and get elected as leader of the Labour Party. I can't quite see it coming off.
Really? So you think perhaps Nigel Farage could thwart his efforts to get back into the House of Commons? You think that actually Reform could well win this?
I mean, we've been talking about Starmer going for a long time. It hasn't happened yet. And the solution to the problem is apparently Burnham winning against the odds in Makerfield and then going on to become leader of the Labour Party. Just isn't going to quite work out. I can't quite see it happening for him.
What do you think the issues are at Makerfield? Why couldn't it be a rubber stamp for Burnham, given that he comes from the area?
Well, we saw the local election results. We saw where people are at politically there at the moment. This is, governments don't often win by-elections, and this government isn't the most popular government around.
Not so much.
Winning against the odds is not really a thing. I can't quite see it coming off, but time will tell.
Now, listen, obviously you're going to say that there will be a Conservative candidate and they will fight hard and you hope to win that seat. But your boss, Kemi Badenoch, has said it's never been a Conservative seat. She's not created the impression it's about to become that. Should the Tories stand down their candidate in order to keep Burnham out of the House of Commons, given the fact that if he becomes Prime Minister, he will shift the country to the left?
Well, I think Kemi's been very clear. She said we will be fielding a candidate. We will give the people of Makerfield... What a terrible
mistake.
Well, we will give people of Makerfield the choice to vote. If they want to vote for a party that's serious about cutting the welfare bill, that actually is completely signed up to bringing back the two-child cap. They want to see an end to stamp duty. They want to see an end to business rates for small businesses on high streets across the country. They're going to have that choice in the ballot paper. They're going to be able to vote Conservative.
Is your priority the national interest even when you're not in power?
I think it always is the national interest. That's why we're in there holding the government to account week in, week out. And of course, the bit that we're all forgetting is there's another hugely important by-election about to take place in Scotland, where we're about 1,000 votes behind the SNP. It will be us or the SNP, the future of the union at stake, sending a real message to the government about the future of drilling in the North Sea. Big important by-election. It seems to be getting swept up because there's a man running around Manchester in his shorts.
Well, it is a significant development in Scotland, and it's also interesting to watch how many Scottish voters have shifted right, mainly because they've experienced decades now of SNP government, and they don't like it too much because the economy has headed south and public services are a catastrophe. So I don't disagree with Scotland being a story, but what we have in Makerfield is a small matter of our next Prime Minister. And you know as well as I do that if big Andy Burnham wins, he will be entering number 10 Downing Street. That's a given.
I'm not sure it's as much of a given as you think it is. I think we then open the game. We play the game then of who's going to be the leader. I'm not convinced it's going to be a home and dry for Andy. The scrutiny's going to come. The debate's going to come. I mean, to be fair, this leadership debate already has got them all talking about the EU. How on earth that is addressing the issues the nation needs to face up to, ridiculous. I do not know. But I'm not convinced that it's home and dry if he gets through the Makerfield by-election. I think it'll still be a a big game to play, a big challenge for him to get that leadership.
Anyone talking about Brexit now in 2026 demonstrates they're not a serious politician. Even if they didn't vote for Brexit, even if in the long distant future they'd like to rejoin, if you're a politician talking about Brexit today, you're not a serious person.
Well, the people at home who are worried about the cost of living, who are worried about crime and antisocial behaviour, who are worried about the record levels of tax, they can't understand why all of these idiots in Westminster are still going on about the EU and thinking that holds the solution to all our problems. The reason businesses are going to the wall, the reason people are out of work is because of the choices that this country is making on tax. The choices at number 10 about putting up business rates, about slamming people with that jobs tax, about the employment rights bill, mean that anybody who runs a business who's struggling to make ends meet cannot supply those jobs to people anymore. It's closing opportunities for the next generation. That has nothing to do with the EU. It's to do with Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer.
Well, that's exactly right. It's quite shocking and an insult to our intelligence to talk about EU membership at this point when, as you say, it's two ruinous budgets that have tanked the economy under the Tories. I'll be nice to you for a second. We had the highest growth in the G7 at the start of 2024. Inflation was at 2%. At the time of the last election. We could only dream of those numbers now. 6:13. Let's take a listen to Prime Ministerial hopeful Andy Burnham on whether or not he wants to rejoin the EU.
Are you in favour of rejoining the European Union?
I've said in the long term there is a case for that, but I'm not advocating that in this by-election. In fact, what I am saying is focus now domestically. Britain has got to focus very much on the here and now and the issues that are affecting people.
Now, Matt Vickers, MP, you've just gone on the record and told my viewers and listeners that you will always act in the national interest even when the Conservatives are in opposition. I salute you for that. A good example of acting in the national interest would not be to run a Conservative candidate in Makerfield in order to keep the incredibly left-wing Andy Burnham out of number 10. That will be the right thing to do. Can you confirm that's what's going to happen?
People deserve the chance to vote Conservative.
National interest, Matthew.
People deserve the chance to vote. There are people in Makerfield who really seriously believe we need to get that welfare bill under control.
He doesn't.
They believe that we need to bring back the two-child cap. They believe that they want to see the end to stamp duty.
Great
they want
policies.
To see our high street,
great Conservative policies.
And people are going to have the chance to vote for it.
All day long, I back them.
But
I think in many ways you've stolen reform's thunder with some of these plans, including reducing spending by 50 billion.
They don't necessarily believe. They don't necessarily believe in reducing the welfare state, unless it suits the populism of the time. There is no real serious. I mean, you heard actually about the two-child cap. You heard Farage's position. He had debates within his own very small team actually about what was and wasn't happening. He wants to
scrap it.
Well,
and
it depends.
He said the right wing. He said the right wing.
It depends. A few weeks ago, they voted against scrapping it. You know, you saw Reform MPs in the lobby voting against. They're all over on welfare. If you're serious about reducing the welfare state in this country so that only there's a safety net to help people, you should be voting Conservative. If you want to see taxes brought down for hard-working people, and instead of paying ever more in taxes to fund ever more for those who don't work, you need to be voting Conservative.
Well, public spending is perhaps one of the Achilles heels of the reform project, and I'll be raising that with Leila Cunningham. I've raised it in the past with Robert Jenrick, and I should raise it with Farage when he joins us on the show. We're actually working long-term to get the leader of reform back here on Talk. But all of that is true, and none of that I disagree with. But Andy Burnham being a Prime Minister of this country, that's worse for the UK than Starmer, because this is a guy that probably will roll the pitch for rejoining the EU and the ultimate Brexit betrayal. And this is a guy that's going to spend more money we haven't got. So in the national interest, you've got to keep him out of the House of Commons. How do you do that? The Tories stand down their candidate.
You say it's going to be significantly worse. We've got unemployment is surging. Businesses are going to the wall at the fastest rate since the world economic crash. It's pretty grim as it is.
Most definitely. But would you accept that it would be worse under Burnham, given that he's to the left of Starmer?
Well, we may well get to find out.
He wants to renationalise everything that moves. He wants to renationalise Dave the engineer, who, let me tell you, is not for sale.
Not yet. It depends how much he's offering, I imagine.
Good point. I mean, Dave's got debts, actually. A couple of failed marriages. It's not cheap. But, I mean, this is... OK, you know, we're having a bit of fun at 17 minutes past 6 in the morning. The Tories, this great iconic party, it's going to run a candidate. It has to. The optics would be catastrophic if not. But no truly conservative person wants Burnham to become PM, there's a certain stability that you'll get with Starmer, even if it's slow decline, rather than a run on the pound, capital flight and a meltdown in the markets if Burnham gets in.
You talk about nationalisation, but I think, Farage is writing out his own nationalisation plans, isn't he, on various industries? You know, it's all part of the game. If people want Conservatives, if they want the fiscal responsibility that comes from Conservatives, if they want people who are going to stand up for hard-working people, reduce the size of that welfare bill, so actually the guys who are on the way to work this morning keep more of the money in the pocket, as opposed to giving more and more and more of that to people who aren't working, then they should vote Conservative.
Well, I agree with those points that you've made. Mary in Canterbury, good morning, Mark, and good morning, Matt. I don't understand why anyone would believe anything that comes out of the mouths of any politician. Andy Burnham will say anything to get in, and the rest of us get stuck with someone we never voted for. Starmer should go, as he screeched at Boris to go for far less. And Martin says the Makerfield by-election is now a referendum on Labour, Brexit, immigration, net zero and tax. Burnham is toast. Interesting message from Mary there. Do you worry about politicians and the public and this sort of gap between the two, the lack of credibility now that politicians have, all of them?
Well, I think one of the problems is that we digest our news through sound bites and the quick flick of the scroll through Facebook or Twitter, and that's what people take as news. So politicians arrive, like Keir Starmer and the Labour Party have arrived, without any real plan. They make a statement on something, the public buy into it, but there's never ever a plan to deliver it, which is a bit about, you know, what Kemi speaks to about if you're going to commit to spending something, you've got to commit to cutting something to pay for it. This government arrived in office without any sort of vision, any idea of what they wanted to achieve in this country. The end result is more money for the unions, more money for those people who aren't working and are on benefits, and the rest of us are picking up the tab, U-turn after U-turn. No vision for the future of the country and dealing with the challenges that we face.
What a treat to have Matt Vickers in the studio with us. You are listening to Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan in for the brilliant Jeremy Kyle today and tomorrow. Jezza is back on Thursday. And Matt Vickers is the Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party. More to come from him. Here's a voice note from Kevin on Ed Miliband.
Good morning, Mark. Kevin from Dundee here. What can I say? Out of all the Labour lot, the worst ones, there is no good one. And the worst one for me being an offshore worker would be Miliband, Ed the Red. And then the North Sea would be shut down completely. But let's face it, they are all going to do it. And even up here, the SNP are just as bad.
Not wig.
It's a nutty canister, either way. I mean, look at the nut on it.
Bob Odenkirk! Saul was great. He was just a breath of fresh air. Amelia Clark! Star Wars versus Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, definitely. I'm loyal.
Don't tell Alex Hassel!
In season 2, a lot of us get our clothes off.
You do know you did that in season 1?
Exactly, that's true, yes.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
6:22, Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan in for Jeremy Kyle. A very busy show. With me live in the studio, Matt Vickers, Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party, no less. Lee in Market Harborough. Good morning, Mark. Another Tuesday, another day where Matt Vickers has all the great ideas that the Tories didn't have when they were in power. Martin says that actually he thinks Andy Burnham is going to lose this by-election. Well, Keir Starmer says he's here to stay. First of all, here is his remarks on the by-election that's coming up.
It is a fight between Leaver and Reform. It's a very important fight. I will be backing 100% whoever the candidate is, not quite chosen yet, but soon to be chosen. Whoever the Labour candidate is, I'll be 100% behind them. I want the whole of the party, whole movement time together. Whatever views people may have on the direction of the party, that needs to be put to one side. It's an important by-election. Let's come together and do what we do as a party best, which is to unite as we campaign into this by-election.
Well, there you go. The characteristically dishonest and slippery Keir Starmer, who tries to make us believe that he'll be backing a candidate in Andy Burnham who should seek to replace him as Prime Minister. And here's what Starmer has said about his future.
I do want to fight the next election. Obviously, I recognise that after the local election results, the elections in Wales and Scotland as well, that the first task is obviously turning things around and making sure that my focus is in the right place. The last 10 days, there's been a lot of activity which hasn't been as focused, in my view, as it should have been. And I remind myself every day that I was elected to office to serve the people, to serve the country. That's what I believe in, and that's what I'll be getting on with.
Now, Matt, you have doubts that Andy Burnham can win the Makerfield by-election. If that's the case, are we stuck with Starmer?
Well, I mean, it's, you know, we all sit here and we've had this debate however many times about he'll definitely be gone in a couple of weeks. He'll be gone, he'll be gone. It's not beyond the realms of possibility that that man remains the Prime Minister in 6 months. This could happen. Those MPs have not triggered that leadership election. We've got a zombie government now. We've got a government that he's waking up every morning wondering how he's going to hold on to the keys to number 10. His cabinet are worried about how they're going to get hold of the keys to number 10 from him. And the entire thing, nobody's worrying about the issues that are facing people every day. The government is not worried about dealing with the immigration crisis. It's not worried about dealing with the unemployment crisis and the fact people are being chucked out of work. It's not worried about the crime that people are facing day in, day out across the country. It's now all about the Westminster psychodrama, more remote from working people out there than ever because of all of this carry-on.
Now, the international bond markets matter in this conversation because they lend us money in order to keep the lights on. They buy government debt, and that is how we are propping up our economy at the moment, as you well know. Of course, it was Andy Burnham that said we need to somehow get the bond markets in check, don't be in hock to them, which was a reckless and idiotic thing to say. It's quite clear that the Rolex-wearing financiers, upon whose largesse we now rely, don't want a new Prime Minister. So do you think that Starmer would be the least bad option until the next election?
I'm not. I mean, people want to see him go. They want to see an end to the start, the 18 months of hell that we've gone through with Starmer at the helm. They want to see an end to it. But there is no knight in shining armour on the horizon, is there? All of the options are bad. Well, we heard someone there talking about Red Ed and what that would mean.
Yikes.
I mean, the other outside player, who knows, David Lammy might rock up. Then the world's problems are all solved.
Mastermind himself.
It's terrifying, isn't it? It's absolutely terrifying. There is no good option here, and I don't quite know where I would like it to land.
Why do you think Starmer is so bad at politics? Because he's not a stupid man, is he?
I think it's because the government arrived without any sort of plan. All they were was they weren't the other fellas, so you should vote for us. Not offensive. They just sat there quietly. You know, the nasal knight. He wasn't going to upset anybody drastically before the election. He kept quiet on every front. He didn't really have any sort of direction. We've got it. We've seen what it's about. We don't like it.
I mean, this makes Liz Truss's 44 days in power look like a golden era for the country, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, there was no scrutiny as well. You do have to think we as a country did put him in power. We didn't just put him in power with a small parliamentary majority. He's got a huge parliamentary majority. He can do what the hell he likes, really, because these MPs will not stand up to him. He went in there, one of the first things those Labour MPs voted for was to remove winter fuel allowance from pensioners. I mean, nobody stood up to him. Where were they? They then went in there the family farm tax. You look at what they're doing to our veterans. What are these MPs doing? These spineless Labour MPs are not standing up to him. Now, all of a sudden, they've seen the local election results come in. They think their job's on the line and they find a backbone to stand up to this Prime Minister. But they were willing to inflict all these things on the British people. It is shameful.
Starmer does have one quality. I wouldn't call it a strength, but a quality. He's ruthless. He's ambitious. He's stubborn. This is a guy that fought hard to become Prime Minister, to become a leader of the Labour Party, pretending to be a Corbynite, then Prime Minister. He did achieve that. So he's not going without a fight, is he?
Well, I mean, he's shameless, actually. You see it at PMQs. The fact the guy will stand in front of the nation and refuse to answer a question in such a way. All MPs are accused of not answering questions. This guy has gonads of steel. He will really stand in front of a nation and literally refuse to even address the question that's being put to him. That is the respect he shows Parliament. That is the respect he shows the British people. He thinks he is beyond all comeuppance. We're about to see what happens with that.
The other advantage for the opposition to keep Starmer is that he's so incredibly popular on the doorstep. So in an ideal world, should you seek to achieve power again, your best bet is Starmer at the next election, isn't it? Rather than Andy Burnham, who, notwithstanding his flip-flopping, is better at politics than Keir Starmer.
The problem is, with the entire thing now, is that it becomes beyond politics, doesn't it? It's not about what is in political interest. It's now about what's in the national interest. I don't quite know what the answer is to that, but it's not more Starmer.
If Starmer does stay, do you think he'll seek some kind of reboot? Could he change direction? What are the options for Starmer if he remains?
Change direction. This is the king of flip-flop. Mr. U-turn himself. How many U-turns are we up to now? It's 26, 27?
Yeah.
He's U-turned on any decision that he ever seems to have made.
Starmer 3.0. What does that look like?
I think we're on about 12.0 now.
Yeah, it's like those dodgy sequels, isn't it? Jaws 3D.
it's a reset a week, isn't it?
Diminishing returns.
He's got the solutions anyway. You know, he turned up, he saw what was happening around him. He thought he was in meltdown. So he called Gordon Brown. Do you know what I mean? He's got to that point now where he's pulling anything out of the drawer. There is no reset. There is nothing else he can do now.
Would a cabinet reshuffle help? Might that freshen things up a little bit?
Well, he's reshuffling as they depart, isn't he? I'm assuming that we might see some more go in the end, but...
And also, it's interesting, isn't it? Because reshuffles are a very excellent mechanism if you're in a strong position as Prime Minister, which we saw with Margaret Thatcher, who really leveraged and weaponised those reshuffles. And it was the threat of the sack that gave her such executive power. Starmer's the opposite. It's almost like he's afraid to have a reshuffle because if he moves one person from one department to another, that's going to be politically sensitive within the party.
Well, you put angry people on the back benches and they can cause you some trouble.
Good luck, yeah. Fascinating stuff. Well, lots more to come. What about Kemi Badenoch? Here's a voice note on the leader of the opposition.
Good morning, Mark. Brian here, mate. I agree with Kemi Badenoch that the Conservative Party should run a candidate in the upcoming Makersville by-election, which is only fair that the Liberal Democrats get a choice of two candidates. Cheers, mate.
Nicely done, Brian. Keep those voice notes coming. Happy Tuesday, one and all. Mark Dolan in for the brilliant Jeremy Kyle. Do you want Andy Burnham to be your next Prime Minister? This is Talk Breakfast.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
.32, you're listening to Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan in for the brilliant Jeremy Kyle. Bend it like Burnham. The king of the North is now king of the U-turn as Prime Ministerial hopeful Andy Burnham rose back on his ambitions to rejoin the European Union and now says he will stick to Rachel Reeves's rules around spending. Let's have a look now at some other stories. Slashing the welfare bill is a priority for Britain, according to the International Monetary Fund. It's interesting, Matt Vickers, Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party, that we're debating the Labour leadership and this rather ugly beauty contest that they're currently having. Meanwhile, Rome burns. Non-existent growth, growing unemployment and a looming debt crisis.
Well, I mean, the reality is we talk about the challenges around finance and the state that the economy was in when this government inherited it. The biggest thing is actually around unemployment. When you think we had record levels of employment, we've now got 17% more people unemployed. And that's a number. That is actually people's lives. That is people who can't look after their families, who can't go out to work, who can't live out their ambitions and their dreams. And these jobs just continue to disappear month on month. Businesses going to the wall. Anybody who's trying to make ends meet, run a business, create jobs, just cannot do it in the climate that they're creating around us. And it's devastating for our high streets. It's devastating for youngsters. I mean, record low levels of graduate recruitment. That's what we're handing to the next generation. You can't get your foot on the jobs ladder. That is devastating. It's bigger than all of the other things he does, is the fact that he's putting people out of work.
Matt, this is why you're an effective politician, because you live in the real world and you get it. And you're so right that unemployment is this great social ill. It's a tragedy for families, for communities, and of course a disaster for the economy, because what happens when you lose your job or can't get a job? You become dependent on the state. This is economic quicksand. We're in trouble.
Well, it's also, I mean, we keep pegging back to when they arrived in office. When you look at the growth in the number of people signing up to sickness and incapacity benefits, it's just not sustainable. It's not affordable. There's about 5,000 people a day signing on to sickness and incapacity.
I think it's up 40% in the last, I think since the end of COVID. It is wild, and we're in big trouble. There is not the political will within this administration to tackle that, though their hand may be forced. Because it's not impossible, is it, Matt, that there will be some kind of economic crisis before the next election?
Well, the reality is...
We could have a Greece moment.
It's those people who are on their way to work today who are picking up the tab for that ever-increasing number of people who are unemployed. It's not sustainable. It can't go on like this. Businesses can't afford to pay any more tax. They can't afford to prop it up anymore.
No, and the big worry is youth unemployment, which has gone up, and one of the reasons why, the minimum wage. Now, wouldn't you agree with me that the principle of minimum wage is a wonderful thing? The principle of workers' rights is a wonderful thing. The principle of businesses conducting themselves, in an appropriate way when it comes to regulations and all the rest of it, no problem. But the road to hell is paved with good intentions, isn't it? This hiking of the minimum wage has been a disaster for businesses, and particularly for young people, because businesses employ young people because they're cheap. And thanks to Rachel Reeves, they're not cheap anymore.
Well, I think it's all the other burdens that come with that, isn't it? It costs about £1,000 more a year to employ someone who is aged 16 to 24 because of the tax burden, because of everything else that comes with it. So you've got the minimum wage, you've then got business rates. If you go down to your local pub, maybe not in London, but you go down to a local pub now and ask them what their rates were 6 months ago versus what they're expecting them to be in the coming years, there are situations where some people are seeing their rates treble. They're paying 3 times as much in business rates. They're paying ever more as a result of the jobs tax, that national insurance increase, and then they're being slammed with the Employment Rights Bill that takes all the rights away from the employer. It means that if you're making the decision now, if you're running that business and you decide if you can take on another youngster, you can take on that apprentice to help your business to develop and go forwards, you're just not going to do it anymore.
It's not scaremongering or exaggerating, Matt Vickers, to fear that a Greece-type moment could face the country before the next election. If you look at the direction of travel, and what if there were another shock, such as another war, such as a pandemic, we are in a very weak position, uniquely so.
Well, ridiculous levels of borrowing now. We're paying more in debt interest than we're paying out for defence or education. That's not sustainable. People aren't paying their taxes to fund the welfare state. They believe that people should be propped up, but they're not paying it in ever-increasing numbers to prop up the welfare state, to prop up ridiculous pay rises for unionised industries. They can't afford it. People can't afford it. People can't afford to run businesses. They can't afford to provide jobs. The economy doesn't work when you saddle it in such a way.
Let's take a voice note on Andy Burnham, King of the North, now King of the U-turn.
Morning, Mark. Andy from Birmingham. All this all makes you laugh about this by-election, doesn't it? You got the Prime Minister Starmer, who's just a zombie Prime Minister, you know, on record yesterday saying, I'm going to go and help fight it for Labour. And all the ministers behind them going, yeah, we're going to fight this for Labour. Labour already have the seat, and they're going up to fight it for a bloke who Manchester don't really like anyway, who wants his job. Make that make sense, mate. Anyway, have a good one.
Thank you for a brilliant voice note. Keep them coming. Meanwhile, how about this for a developing story? HS2, Matt Vickers, will cost more than NASA's moon mission, and they're still building it, and it only goes to Birmingham.
Well, cynics out there would say, well, anybody with any common sense would say, government just can't deliver projects like this, can it? It cannot do infrastructure. It cannot do procurement. It's not, you know, it just can't do it. The worst thing you can do is put politicians in charge of building or buying anything. Governments cannot. The answer to problems is not to nationalise industries. Putting politicians in charge is never the solution to it.
No, this was a political vanity project for Tony Blair, wasn't it? This was his monument. This was his grand projet, as the French put it.
Well, I mean, is it a bad idea to have, you know, speedy trains, high-speed rail? It's not a bad idea. Can government deliver it? No. Should we be looking to the private sector to drive change like this? It's the only way to actually do it in this country.
All day long. What might have been better is simply to upgrade the existing rail network that we have and maybe invest in a few buses. It turns out buses are extremely popular. In fact, that is one positive that Andy Burnham's got. That's his great legacy in Greater Manchester, king of the buses.
Well, you know,
the public really appreciate bus networks.
People out there are wondering what this amazing guy from Manchester is all about. What is it that makes him so amazing? Is it just that the grass is greener and that he's not Starmer? Is it the buses, the B network? One of the papers today, the Mail has tried to set out what is it he stands for. Gives you his visions on this, that and the other. There is not a single mention in there of jobs, of immigration or crime. The big challenges that are facing the country, nobody actually knows what he stands for on those fronts. But we think, the Labour Party thinks this is the knight in shining armour who's going to save the country. We don't quite understand why. Most of the great British public can't work out who is he, what's he going to fix, and why is he the solution to our problems?
Most definitely. We need a new item on the show, and we should just call it Woke Watch, Christian, where we flag up the latest crazy woke story of the day. Lovely Piers Morgan, a friend of mine, has written a book called Woke is Dead. Piers, I'm so sorry. We're going to have to pulp every copy of that book because woke ain't dead. How about this, Matt Vickers? School children are being taught that black people cannot be racist to white people. Children are being taught that people of colour cannot be racist towards white people as part of an education initiative aimed at countering racism. Teenage pupils are told that black people can be racially prejudiced towards, but white people cannot. This is utter madness, isn't it? It's regressive, it's dangerous and counterproductive.
Well, we look at all these contorted sort of ideas. It's very simple to tell young people about racism, but because we get caught in the weeds like this and because we're unable to articulate the message properly to youngsters, we do have serious issues with racism. Well, we have serious issues with anti-Semitism in this country.
Sure.
We have a national emergency when it comes to anti-Semitism. There was another story this morning, actually, about someone in Golders Green being attacked overnight by a gang of youths because of their religion and because of their faith. So while the educators are debating the ins and outs of that, they're failing to instil well, a person who is Jewish in this country is 12 times as likely to be a victim of a hate crime. We aren't bringing that home in our education system for some reason. We're allowing that to go unchecked at the same time as having a waffly debate about other elements of racism and the rights and wrongs of who can and can't be a racist.
Well, the Conservatives have been very strong on anti-Semitism, with your boss Kemi Badenoch pointing out that it's only Jewish primary schools that require security.
It's terrifying. Well, she talks herself, as a woman of colour, she talks about the fact that she would never be subjected to the sort of racism that the people who are Jewish in this country face. And if she was subjected to it, she said if black people were treated in the same way as Jewish people are being treated, it would be a very different public debate about it now. We would be seeing huge clamours. Anti-Semitism in this country is out of control. The government needs to get a grip. We as a society need to get a grip of this evil, vile horror that is taking place on our streets.
In some quarters, anti-Semitism is ignored. In some quarters, including fashionable middle-class dinner parties, it is celebrated. It's almost a good look now. And what you have is anti-Israel or anti-Zionism as a proxy and a fig leaf for Jew hate.
I mean, the thing is, we allow these marches to take place on the streets of our capital city week after week after week. I mean, Kemi has come out and said we should ban those marches. We should not allow them to be used as a cover for some of the vile chants, some of the vile activities that are going on our streets. We've got a national emergency on anti-Semitism, yet every week we allow people to march through the streets of our capital city chanting some horrific, vile things, whilst one community within our country, they're terrified to go out in the streets of our capital city. They're terrified to send their kids to school. They're terrified to go to their place of worship. This is modern Britain. We can't allow it to happen.
Some critics of the Tories will say that the Conservatives have a problem with Islamophobia. What do you think?
Not at all. Racism is racism. The reality is that some of our problems are our inability to call it out, to be upfront, to be frank. We talk about the grooming gangs debate. Police officers, local authorities terrified of being called racist. Yet at the same time, we fail to call it out where it exists. We just need to be realistic. Racism is regardless of colour, regardless of faith. If you treat one group differently, as those Jews are being treated differently in this country, it is racism.
6:44, you're listening to Talk Breakfast. Do you want Britain's next Prime Minister? Do you want your next Prime Minister to be Andy Burnham? 0344 499 1000. And what did Matt Vickers make of the Unite the Kingdom march this weekend? All of that to come.
Not wig.
It's a nutty canister, either way. I mean, look at the nut on it.
Bob Odenkirk! Saul was great. He was just a breath of fresh air. Amelia Clark!
Star Wars versus Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, definitely. I'm loyal.
Don't tell Alex Hassel!
In season 2, a lot of us get our clothes off.
You do know you did that in season 1?
Exactly, that's true, yes.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
6:47 Talk Breakfast, lots more to come. At 9 a.m, I'll be joined live in the studio by Reform UK's London mayoral hopeful, Layla Cunningham, for a special edition of Call Cunningham. 0344 499 1000 is our number. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Do you want Andy Burnham to be your next Prime Minister? Good morning, Matt, and good morning, Mark, says Sharon. Starmer is totally delusional. Why the hell does this man think he'll be leader at the next election? He has no shame. Richard in Leicester, good morning, Mark, and good morning, Matt. Labour did not come to power to help the country, neither did Starmer. Look what he's done already. Prove me wrong, says Richard. What about this from Guy, who says, good morning, Mark, and hello, Matt. Top of the morning to you. No, 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 no. Burnham has zero integrity. He's a populist by definition. Seems to choose his politics around whichever way the wind is blowing. He's simply a career politician with no conviction. If you're a staunch Remainer and you simply just change your mind to win a seat, that is populism. He's hijacking a constituency for personal gain. The North does not like that sort of thing. Have a great day, Guy. Thank you for that. We'll get some more of your messages and voice notes shortly. But can I ask you briefly, Matt, about the United the Kingdom protest, which happened, the march this weekend? 1/3 maybe 500,000, depending on how many, depending on who you listen to. But a lot of people turned up in central London, not happy about the direction of travel of the country. It was not a far-right rally. There were a handful of arrests, partly as a result of left-wing agitators from the other march. What did you make of the whole thing?
I mean, people protest. It's a powerful thing. I don't endorse Tommy Robinson and lots of things he says and does. Do I think it's right that people are out there flying the flag, making a noise, protesting, having their say? Fine. The minute it crosses into illegality, the law needs to be upheld in a consistent way. That's where the question marks arise from these debates, is that one side gets policed very differently to the other. The police cannot be allowed to see that happen. And I mean, the police do face a terrible task. Everybody's got a camera in their hand. Everything they do is double questioned. You only ever see part of the clip and you only get half the story very often. It gets onto Twitter, it grows legs. The police get abused and battered for doing something wrong. If policing is consistent, if it is colourblind and does the right thing, regardless of politics, regardless of people's colour, faith or religion, then that's the way forwards. There was people misbehaving there who deserved to face the full force of the law.
But it's amazing, isn't it, what the scale of it. So, 1/3 of a million, 500,000, depends on who you listen to, but a lot of people there, several 100,000 people, a handful of arrests, maybe less than 50. I mean, you'd have more arrests at a football match, wouldn't you? So what does it tell us about that cause, the patriotic cause, that there were so few arrests, that it was so peaceful? What does that tell us?
Well, I think when you've got a disproportionately low number of arrests, that's a positive thing. But, we take these stats with a pinch of salt as to numbers of arrests and how it comes out.
But even Sky News couldn't get pictures of people having brawls or anything, could they?
That's true, and they're always desperate to find them as well.
Isn't it? I mean, I appreciate your remarks about Tommy Robinson. You're entitled to that view. But what about the people that went, right? Those that weren't arrested. What's your view of those people? What do you think of those folk?
I think people have come out.
Are they good people?
There are people out there with very legitimate concerns about the direction of travel in this country, who have very strong views, and rightly so, about the lack of integration in the country, about the challenges posed by immigration. And they're right to have their say.
Yeah.
If that's the way that they choose to present that, then they're right.
Are they right?
Can I say that everybody who appeared there and some of the banners that were on display and some of the behaviours were right? No, but do I think there is a groundswell of people who are concerned about what's happening in this country?
Would you say the vast majority of the folk on the Unite the Kingdom march were good people and decent people?
Well, I don't know the vast majority of people on there, but I think there were definitely people there.
Say they were.
Well, I can well imagine that they were. I think it's right that people have the opportunity to go out and speak. When you're a politician, you know what happens in 10 minutes' time. I go out there saying that and they play some video that gets attached to me.
You've got plenty of cover, because Sir Trevor Phillips said that the majority of people at the last march were good people, the sort of folk that you'd see in your local cricket club or queue in the pub next to for a pint. And that's the point, isn't it? That it's just millions of people now who are just not happy about the direction of the country. And they're entitled to, because it is their country.
Yeah, I mean, it's the things that people across the country are saying. These guys are taking the time to put up a banner and go out and march and make a noise about it.
Yeah, and the Tories have not thrown any shade on that march in particular, right?
No, well, actually,
kept a sort of political distance from Tommy Robinson, but other than that, no condemnation. Unlike Keir Starmer, who framed the Unite the Kingdom event as a far-right rally.
Well, he was telling us anybody who had concerns about immigration and jumped on a far-right bandwagon. He's so detached. a lot of the things that those people are protesting about are things that everybody across the country is thinking. And actually, Kemi went further than that. Not only did she not, what do we say, throw shade on it? She actually contrasted between the two.
I learned that from my teenager son.
She said,
I've got a teenager son. I can explain. I don't just have a teenager in a van somewhere.
Well, she actually made it a greater contrast than that, because she has called for a moratorium on the hate marches that take place, those pro-Palestine hate marches that take place every week. She said they should be banned. That was the contrast between the two things that were on display in London this weekend. You had a gang of people who, a huge number of whom, have very strong views about Palestine and are willing to allow those marches to be used to fuel hate, to create division, to terrify Jewish people who are walking around the streets of London.
Talented shadow front bench, yourself included. Then you've also got a leader in Kemi Badenoch, comfortable in her own political skin, smashing it at Prime Minister's questions, a talented politician that's growing in popularity. Why did you do so badly as a party in the May elections?
So I think, 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago, we sent a very big message by the country. Many of those people have gone now. We've got a new leader. I wasn't a minister in that government. Time marches on. You've got to be heard. You've got to take the time for people to look again at you. That started happening because Kemi's making waves. And actually, the elections that took place this year, a large number of them last took place in 2021, when, of course, we had the vaccine bounce. The Conservatives were at 43% in the polls. So, of course, we were going to come back down. That was always going to be the case. Did we improve when compared to last year, though? Yes, we did. We increased our share of the vote. We're nowhere near where we need to be, but we are making progress. Labour obviously fell back massively when compared against last year. Reform fell back compared to last year. We've got a cracking leader. She knows what she's about. You might not agree with her all the time, but you know where she stands. She's a woman with backbone who can make the decisions this country needs to make.
I've got a pitch for you for your boss, Kemi Badenoch. I think that her image at the next election can be sensible mum, with a message that all the other politicians are behaving like children, they're indulgent, they're eating too much ice cream and making, mischief. And I think she can sort of swan in down the middle and say, I'm the grown-up in the room. That's the pitch.
Yeah, she knows what she's about. She knows what her views are, and she's not afraid to have her say. And I think that's kind of what we need as a country.
Most definitely. A Malaysian migrant with no legal right to work in the UK has won an employment tribunal case after facing discrimination in the workplace. Erin Ong is in line for compensation, even though she did not have a work permit and was only on a visitor's visa when she was managing a hotel in Britain. So you win an employment tribunal even though you didn't have a right to work. If that doesn't demonstrate just how broken this country is, nothing does.
Well, we've got that Green MSP elected, haven't we, who apparently doesn't have the right to work, but is now representing people. Huge debate to be had there. But I think actually it all comes back, this entire crisis of illegal immigration comes back to the fact that if you break into this country, if you come here illegally, you should not be allowed to stay. Until we start detaining and deporting people who break in, we are never going to get a grasp of this stuff.
No, most definitely not. Here's a voice note from Tony on, if you'd forgotten his name, Keir Starmer. He's still our Prime Minister for now.
Morning, Mark. Tony from Worcester. With regards to what you're talking about this morning, you played a clip of Keir Starmer being very relaxed and happy with the Andy Burnham election coming up. It proves what an accomplished liar he is. You got to think that he blocked the man a couple of months ago, but now he's all calm and happy and will support anybody.
What do you think Keir Starmer might try to do to cling on to power? Could he have a rabbit in the hat? Is there anything that he can do that he can weaponise? Any levers he can pull that we're not expecting in order to stay in power?
Well, the one thing he is very good at is just boring us all to death. So perhaps he's just going to deploy that boredom on the world. We'll all get fed up of talking about him and go away. I don't know, really. Very valid point there. A few months ago, he felt that he needed to block Burnham getting into Parliament.
Yeah.
Now he's lost his bottle and daren't block him getting into Parliament. What changed? What changed? Why all of a sudden is he allowed to stand as a parliamentary candidate? And then, actually, what is the outcome for Manchester? That's the next bit of the story. If Burnham got elected, what happens to the mayoralty in that by-election?
Yeah, it's my view, on every issue, Starmer's been on the wrong end of the argument. Immigration, net zero, patriotism, national identity. the COVID lockdowns, Brexit. For me, this is a guy that is the broken clock that's not even right twice a day. That's my view of Starmer, a man of uniquely and consistently poor judgment. That said, his decision to block Burnham for Gorton and Denton might prove to be a masterstroke if Andy Burnham doesn't win Makerfield.
Very true, very true. Would he have won Gorton and Denton, though? I'm not entirely sure.
He would have walked it, wouldn't he?
I'm still not convinced he would have won. The thing with these by-elections, whoever you think is the front runner, whoever is meant to win, very often just doesn't win. The public don't like. They love an underdog. We're about to find out what happens.
Is it an insult to the electorate to have this by-election, given the fact that it's nakedly about Andy Burnham's ambitions?
Well, yeah, a chap elected 18 months ago decided to give way to give Andy Burnham a run at leadership. I think the people of Makerfield can take umbrage at that. But then again, we saw the vox pops, we saw people being questioned in the street who said, oh yeah, let's give it to our Andy. So we'll see, time will tell.
Would you sacrifice your seat to allow the return of Boris Johnson?
Oh, that is an interesting question. I don't know how well that would go down in Stockton West, to be fair.
No denial at 6:58. Stop the press. Fascinating, isn't it? By the way, what do you think about the changes in Prime Minister? It happened under the Conservatives. Do you think at some point we should look at having an election if we get a new Prime Minister? Should that be a constitutional rule?
Well, I think all sorts of things happen to Prime Ministers. I think it comes back to this discussion around plans. It comes back to if a government arrives in office, it tells the public what it's going to do and continues to deliver that agenda, then that is the right thing. If a government arrives in office with no plan, it hasn't really engaged in its contract with the electorate. If Keir Starmer was in there now doing everything the Labour Party had promised and someone else came over and carried on that agenda, then it might be a very different thing to the fact that this is a government lost in and of itself.
Isn't Jezza lucky to have you in every Tuesday? Matt Vickers, a delight to speak this morning. Matt Vickers is the Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party. Do you want Andy Burnham to be your next Prime Minister? This is Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Top of the morning, 7:02. Mark Dolan in for the brilliant Jeremy Kyle today and tomorrow. A packed show for you. Breaking this morning. Bend it like Burnham, the King of the North, is now the King of the U-turn. As Prime Ministerial hopeful Andy Burnham rose back on his ambitions to rejoin the European Union and now says that he will stick with Rachel Reeves' rules around spending. But does that mean higher taxes for you and I should he become PM? What about this for woke madness? Children at school are being taught you cannot be racist towards white people. And could Nigel Farage be responsible for the mother of all political upsets and win the Makerfield by-election? And my question to you this morning at 7:03 on a Tuesday is a simple one. Do you want Andy Burnham to be your next Prime Minister? My phone number is 0344 499 1000. Tommy's on the phones, so book your place on the show. Text the word talk, any message to 87222 or leave us a voice note. Producer Christian loves a voice note. Dave the engineer pressing the buttons. Luke is directing our TV output. You can hear us on DAB+, in-app and online. You can also watch the show, and many are doing so in record numbers. Head over to YouTube, search Talk, hit the live button, and up we pop. Do you want Andy Burnham to be your next Prime Minister? That is our conversation. Well, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, remains in number 10. Clinging on for dear life. Let's get reaction via a voice note from Hev.
Good morning, Mark. It's Hev from Kent. Yeah, I reckon if Andy Burnham actually gets voted in, he won't be the next Prime Minister because I reckon Starmer will call a general election because nobody's going to beat Starmer. Nobody in Labour is going to oust him. He wants to be in control. He wants to be the big boss. And if he can't be, or if he thinks he's threatened, seriously threatened, I reckon he'll call a general election. I don't reckon that he will just sit back and let Burnham take over. But then again, I don't even think Burnham's got a chance in winning this election.
Well, that's really fascinating. And Hev, I'm hearing that from a lot of political sources, that actually Farage could be responsible for the mother of all political upsets and keep Andy Burnham out of the House of Commons. Now, if Burnham loses this by-election, his political career is over. So that's quite a story. This from Sue. Good morning, Mark. Loving the show. Absolutely not regarding Andy Burnham. He's another Starmer. He's doing another Labour Ming Vase strategy, saying little other than he wants change. He's just saying what he thinks people want to hear to get elected, and once elected, he will do the exact opposite. We don't need another Starmer. That is Sue from Ripon in North Yorkshire, which is a beautiful part of the world. On HS2, Steve says, good morning, Mark. HS2, utter folly, should be scrapped immediately, all those billions, to shave 20 minutes off a journey that no one will use because of increased ticket costs. Well, we have this amazing developing story this morning that HS2 is now projected to cost more than NASA's mission to the moon. You couldn't make it up, could you? If you actually go via NASA to the moon, do you get a better sandwich as well, I wonder? And what about a coffee? Do you have to pay like £6 just for a latte? Great show, says Dave in Leyland. The definition of integration is integration, the act or process of combining different parts, elements or systems to form a single unified and functional whole. How is it then possible to have multi-cultures? Well, Dave, you're so right about that, because we have a very successful multi-ethnic society here in the UK, but multiculturalism is a left-wing socialist ideology. The base is integration on no expectation of joining the culture, participating in the rules, speaking the language. And that's why we are in such hot water. And I've got to tell you that I'm really, really worried about the prospect of Andy Burnham in number 10, because he will take the country leftwards. Should he win a leadership election, which I think if he gets back into the House of Commons is a given, then his left-wing supporters, the unions, the party membership, they will expect their pound of flesh. And I've got to be honest with you, I do not think the country can afford socialism. Daniel is in Epsom. Good morning, Daniel.
Morning, Mark. I mean, I think the bottom line here is I'm speaking for the British majority today, okay? I'd like to just sit him down and go, listen, Andy, are you going to stop illegal immigration? He'd say, no, I can't. I'd say, are you going to make legal immigration extremely low numbers and very selective? No, I'm not. Are you going to get on top of law and order? Basically, violence and theft are now basically legal in the country. Are you going to do anything about it? No. Oh, are you going to improve the economy? Are you going to improve business? As a small business owner, I can tell you this Labour government have been absolute poison for the country. Are you going to do anything about that? If he's not going to do anything about the main four issues in all of our lives, what is the point in Andy Burnham? Why are we going through this entire process? What's the point in it?
Daniel, I agree with you. I mean, Keir Starmer, Boris Johnson, Andy Burnham, I'm sick of people who only want to be Prime Minister and have no plan for government.
Yes, it's not even that they've got no plan. The Labour, the last Conservative government was poor, and it was awful, and I think most people would agree with that. But this Labour government's even worse. Even if you're a Labour supporter, you've got to stand there and think, how on earth did this happen? Right? The quality of people in public life is awful, abysmal. You know, when you're in government and you work for the British public, you should do the things that the British public demand of you, right? Now, it's been pretty clear that immigration from mass immigration from the third world is destroying the fabric of our country, okay? Anyone with eyes who's over the age of 45 can see that it's basically destroying the fabric of our country. Something urgent. I've got children, Mark. I've got 3 kids, okay? Now, I'm worried about their futures. Something urgent and bold needs to be done, and this Labour government is not going to do anything about it. You know what is the point in changing the Prime Minister? What's that old phrase? It's like you've cacked yourself, and instead of changing your pants, you change your shirt.
It's a brilliant point. Daniel, you always speak so well. Call me again soon. Loved our conversation this morning on Talk Breakfast. Daniel in Epsom there. And he's so right. We are going in a very bad direction. At 10 minutes past 7 in the morning, I have breaking news for you, which is that the rate of UK unemployment has now risen to 5% in the 3 months to March. This is the Labour government and the Labour Party, the party of working people, who are now responsible for more people out of work. 5% unemployment. Now, be clear that under the last Conservative government, those evil Tories, we had pretty much eradicated unemployment. It was gone. The numbers were trivial. And in fact, there were 1 million job vacancies at the time of the last election. Well, thanks to Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer and their left-wing policies, the rate of UK unemployment has risen to 5%. Now, you could have told them that this would have happened. And I could have told them with the national insurance tax rate, which was a jobs tax, with red tape making life a misery for employers, with the workers' rights package, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, with an increase in the minimum wage, which has created the highest youth unemployment in the whole of Europe, which is going some because no one in Spain works. 7:11 in the morning, folks, and we bring you the breaking news that UK unemployment is now up to 5% from, laughably, the party of working people who are now no longer in work. Let's get reaction from one of my favourite politicians, Lord John Redwood, former Conservative Cabinet Minister. Lord Redwood, thank you so much for joining us. Unemployment up again. What a surprise.
Well, it isn't, and it's very bad news, and none of us want to hear this, but it was entirely predictable, as you, I, and others have been saying. You put taxes up, and you drive the rich away and you get rid of the investment. You put taxes on jobs and you have fewer jobs. Vacancies go down. You make it too dear to employ people, and instead of young people having opportunities, they're on the dole, and we're facing this problem that unemployment's going up. I'm so glad you pointed out that between 2010 and 2024, unemployment actually halved because we had policies which did get people into work. Labour came in and said, oh, well, of course, you Tories, absolutely useless. And now we have this really big problem, and they have no policy in place that's going to get that unemployment down. They've annoyed and pressurised so many employers that there aren't going to be the vacancies.
Most definitely. And just digging back into the history books, Lord Redwood, if we look at the specific period of 2010 to 2015, which was a very difficult time for the British economy following the credit crunch, what the coalition did is reduce massively the size of the public sector and those employed by the state, and 1 million new jobs were created in the private sector in the course of that parliament. So it's all about policy.
Yes, it is indeed. And this government and the people who now want to take over as Prime Minister, they all want to nationalise more things. Well, they've bungled their steel nationalisation. It's now costing us 1.3 million a day for the 2 blast furnaces in Scunthorpe. They say they saved the jobs, but actually their policy, and they should come clean about this, is to close those blast furnaces because of their net zero policies. And so those jobs will go after we subsidise them for a bit. This is the worst kind of misleading of the workforce, and it's doing damage to the rest of the country. The more you spend, the more you waste, the more you have to pay losses in the nationalised sector, the higher the taxes go. And the mummy and daddy of them all, the bad nationalised industries, is, of course, HS2. And we're going to learn today how many more billions it's going to cost to have a railway line that only goes to Birmingham, if we're lucky, and no longer can go to Leeds and Manchester because of totally incompetent nationalised industry with access to billions and billions of our hard-earned taxes so far. It is bungling it and cannot afford to complete the railway line.
As we bring you the news, Lord John Redwood, at 14 minutes past 7 in the morning on Talk Breakfast, that HS2 now costs more than NASA's space mission, which is going some. Back to unemployment. One of the most worrying metrics is youth unemployment, isn't it? That's a big problem for the future of the country.
Oh, I think it's devastating because we all want our young people, our children and our grandchildren to have plenty of good job opportunities and choices, and they are being destroyed by the tax on jobs, national insurance, by the tax on small farms, by the tax on small businesses, by the tax on richer people that Labour obviously dislikes so much. And the only thing Labour will end up with is a bit less inequality because they've got rid of all the people who've got some money. And that's poverty for the rest. It isn't success. And they don't seem to get this. Of course, you can get inequality down if you drive out all the rich.
Most definitely. Labour politicians call themselves progressive, Lord Redwood, but non-existent growth, growing debt and growing unemployment is quite the opposite. It is regressive. It's a race to the bottom. It's economic quicksand. We're in trouble, aren't we?
Yes, it's levelling down. It's dreadful for people. And then the tensions get greater in communities. The benefit bill goes through the roof. And then there's even more tax that has to be paid by the people who have stuck it out here and are trying to run a business or doing a job that pays them a bit more money, and then they're made to feel wrong about the fact that they're successful. I want to live in a country that is proud of success and is grateful that people commit their capital and save and invest and provide new jobs. And that was what we were creating, and that is what is being destroyed. And we now see that Andy Burnham and Wes Streeting and the Prime Minister all seem to agree that the only policy they've got that they think would promote growth is to put us back into the EU to the extent that they can get away with it. And that is a slow growth, high unemployment zone with all the kind of problems we've got here now with high taxes, too much regulation. And so all the business is coming from America. And America is cleaning up. And America now has GDP per head twice as high as the EU average. And that's what Starmer wants more of. He wants to level us down to the EU average.
I want to come to Andy Burnham in just a moment, if I can, Lord Redwood. One other statistic that's been underreported, so I'm going to make sure it's in the spotlight today. According to the Sunday Times, 1 in 6 members of the Sunday Times Rich List from last year have left the UK. Can you explain to my viewers why it's such a problem for the country for wealthy people to leave?
Well, it's a huge problem for the country because the wealthy people who were here were paying a very large amount of tax, each person. And so we lose their tax revenue. So that means people on lower pay have got to pay more tax to make up the gap. It means those people are not available to create businesses here. They're not available to go expensive shopping, to create jobs for all the people in the shops and all the people supplying those specialist goods and services. So we're all much worse off. I want to live in a country where there are some rich people, because then they can hire people, they can make things, they can commit to new businesses, as they are doing in America, as they're doing in the Middle East. That's where our people have been going, and we are the poorer for it.
John, briefly, if you can, what's your appraisal of Andy Burnham as a prospective Prime Minister of this country?
Well, the master of the flip-flop, isn't he? You know, this is the pure Blairite loyalist under Tony Blair, and then he became strongly in favour of Corbyn. Then he wanted a more left-wing alternative to Starmer. And then yesterday we had the great climb down. You know what? The bond markets wouldn't like it. That would mean our mortgage rates and interest costs for companies would go up if you had kind of economics his left-wing friends want. So he's watered that all down, so it must be a big disappointment to them as well. And there was Burnham saying, well, of course, we need more EU, so why don't we go back into it, which is the logical way you should go if you really believe in the EU. And now he's realised that that isn't popular with the voters at the seat he might want to fight. And so another flip-flop, a new turn on that. Oh, let's not talk about it. That's the new way of MPs and wannabe MPs lying, I guess, that I've got a view you won't like, so I tell you what, I won't tell you about it.
John, thank you so much for your valuable time this morning on Talk Breakfast. Lord John Redwood, former Conservative Cabinet Minister. Just breaking news as we come on air. The rate of UK unemployment rose to 5% in the 3 months to March. So, folks, the Party of Working People has now put more people out of work. Make it make sense. Andy Burnham, do you want him to be your next Prime Minister? Here's a voice note from Laura.
Morning, Mark. Laura from London. Andy Burnham for Prime Minister? Absolutely not. He'll do what Keir did. He'll come in, he'll promise all these wonderful things that he won't do or he will do. And then once he's in, he won't do the things he said he would do, and he'll do the things he said he wouldn't do. No, thank you.
Well put. Do you want Andy Burnham to be your next Prime Minister? 7:19. This is Talk Breakfast.
not wig.
It's a nutty canister, either way. I mean, look at the nut on it.
Bob Odenkirk!
Saul was great. He was just a breath of fresh air.
Amelia Clark! Star Wars versus Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, definitely.
Go.
I'm loyal.
Don't touch Alex Hassel!
In season 2, a lot of us get our clothes off.
You do know you did that in season 1.
Exactly, that's true.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
(7:23) Talk Breakfast. We bring you the breaking news that the rate of UK unemployment rose to 5% in the 3 months to March. In just a couple of minutes' time, I'll be joined live in the studio by a Labour MP. How can it be that the party of working people has now put people out of work? Debbie has messaged the show. Mark, I don't really care who is our Prime Minister anymore. I voted reform at the last couple of elections, but lately have been disappointed with a few things related to Farage. Until it becomes the law that an election manifesto is legally binding and that any major changes to our country outside that manifesto is put to the electorate, then nothing will change. Do you want Andy Burnham to be your next Prime Minister? Laura Jane is in Hampshire. Good morning, Laura Jane.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very well. Happy Tuesday. How are things in Hampshire this morning? A little damp, I'm guessing.
Very damp.
I mean, honestly, did the calendar not get the memo that it's May now and it's supposed to be quite pleasant outside?
It's unbelievably cold. I shan't be walking the dogs till later when apparently there's going to be gale force winds. So anyway.
How do the dogs cope with the cold?
Oh, they're fine.
They're hardy, just like their owner.
They just don't like the wet. Listen, Mr. Flip-Flop up in Manchester, I mean, honestly, it's a joke. It really is. They'll say anything, and he is the worst of that, Mr. Andy Burnham. He is saying anything to get into that Makersfield constituency, and I think it's actually appalling that so many people, well, career politicians, and I hate to be critical of Matt because I think he's a really nice, intelligent guy, but I mean, some of the stuff he was saying, has he forgotten what they did or didn't do during those 14 years? Just to give HS2 as an example, I mean, they put the whole thing in motion.
It's true.
I've got friends all the way along that line who've had terrible things happen as a result. You know, farms, bits of land having to be forcibly sold, etc. And the amount of money, when actually they could have put a few of Andy Burnham's buses and a bit, they could have worked out, you know, all the rail that need upgrading near Leeds, and you know, they really could have spent a good amount of money. Who needs a faster train to Birmingham? I mean, give over. But going back to Burnham, I don't think he's going to be any better than Starmer. In fact, I think they seem to come from the same stock. I think we're in a very worrying situation. There are no decent politicians out there. I mean, I have to be fair to Kemi Badenoch. She's beginning to be a good orator. I come from a generation where I have got two prime ministers in my family. They were both very good orators. And I think we are in a serious situation where politicians are career politicians. I think it should be the law that you can't become an MP until you're 40 at least and have had a decent career so that voters can see what you've done with your life.
Laura Jane, brilliant call. We'll speak again soon. Now, we bring you the breaking news that the rate of UK unemployment has risen to 5% in the 3 months to March. Let's get reaction from the Shadow Energy Secretary and Shadow Minister for Equalities, Claire Coutinho MP. Good morning, Claire.
Good morning.
Thank you for braving the elements to join us on Talk Breakfast. Unemployment up again. Sadly, it's not a surprise.
No, and it is very sad for the country because since Labour have come in, what have they done? They've been piling taxes after tax onto business. You've got Ed Miliband shutting down the North Sea. You know, they are hammering young people, making it much more expensive to hire a young person. We've lost 100,000 jobs in the hospitality sector. It's a disaster for people who are trying to get their foot on the ladder in their first job. And I'm afraid it is all down to Labour's anti-business, anti-enterprise, anti-growth sentiment.
And the issue is, Claire Coutinho, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, isn't it? The idea of the minimum wage being raised is obviously something that people wouldn't necessarily object to, but it appears to have led to the highest youth unemployment in Europe, and youth unemployment is a particularly worrying new development.
Yeah, it's really bad. You talk to young people and they are sending off for job application after job application, sometimes, 100 times and barely getting a response. I really worry about them. And what they've done is this. They have raised the minimum wage and they have crushed businesses' ability to pay for it. So whether it's the jobs tax or it's business rates, they have hammered business so they can't pay for these minimum wages. And that means not only have you got the young people who are suffering because they can't get jobs, it's all of those people who work in the cafe or the shop or wherever it might be who get paid above minimum wage. Their salaries are being crushed too because they now can't get a raise because their businesses can't afford it.
Yeah.
So yes, I think unemployment being higher and higher is a real problem. We haven't even talked about AI, which is coming down the tracks of what that might do. And then you look at something like today, we're going to have a King's Speech where Ed Miliband and the Labour Party are willfully shutting down a successful industry in the North Sea. And then you look at Andy Burnham talking about reindustrialisation. You think, have they lost their minds? If you care about industry and if you care about jobs, you've got to back the North Sea. And at the moment, we're the only country in the world, thanks to Ed Miliband, who is willfully shutting our own domestic energy industry down.
Now, Claire, you are the Shadow Energy Secretary, and a ban on slave labour is apparently reportedly going to be sidelined to meet Ed Miliband's net zero goals. Your reaction?
Well, look, we put that ban in place. We laid the amendment. We forced Labour to accept it, to say Great British Energy, Ed's pet project company, has to make sure he's not buying solar panels which are made with slave labour in China. We forced him into making that pledge, and it looks like he's now going back on it. So what has he really achieved? Great British Energy, he's borrowed billions of pounds on the taxpayers' bill, and it seems that all it's doing is putting solar panels made by slaves in China on schools. I mean, this is ludicrous, and he's doing this in some sort of sense of climate leadership. That's what he talks about. I mean, what exactly is that leading to? I don't think that's any kind of moral leadership at all. So this is why we've said as a party, we've made mistakes in the past, we need to correct them. The net zero legislation is now doing more harm and then good, and so we need to get rid of that legislation. We need to be able to look sensibly at what we need in terms of our energy, make sure we've got cheap energy in the country, that we can back the North Sea, get the country drilling again, and get rid of some of these taxes which are killing off British industry and forcing us just to import things from China.
A new poll, Claire Coutinho, suggests that Andy Burnham would beat Sir Keir Starmer in a vote to lead the Labour Party and become Prime Minister. Would Andy Burnham be a better PM than Starmer?
I mean, look, I think Andy Burnham at the moment has had the privilege of being the sort of fun uncle who can say whatever he wants from the sidelines but has no responsibility for anything. He said, we don't have to care about the bond markets, I'll rejoin the EU, I'll nationalise everything. He doesn't have to talk about how he's paying for it. I mean, it's basically the fun uncle saying, don't worry, we're going to have ice cream for dinner, we'll go to the zoo next week. He's not picking up the bill. So I think the fact that he's popular now is only because he's had no real responsibility for any of the things that he said. If he gets into power, I'm sure he'll be just as unpopular as Keir, because he's not going to take on welfare. I don't think he's going to back Shabana on the immigration reforms. I don't think he's going to sort out what Ed Miliband's doing on energy. I mean, I think the rumour is that he might make Ed Miliband Chancellor. How popular is that going to make him then? So, I take all of this with a pinch of salt. Let's wait to see what happens and what actually he says about what he might do in power, because we've really not seen much yet.
I suspect it's in the national interest, Claire Coutinho, to keep Andy Burnham out of number 10, because it's likely to be a left-wing agenda that the country can ill afford. Do you think, therefore, the Conservatives should stand down their candidate in Makerfield in order to make sure that Starmer stays?
Well, look, I don't think it's for the Westminster establishment to stitch up between them who they think is the best candidate in any of these seats. Bear in mind, we're fighting Aberdeen South, and there was a contest recently which would have kept the leader of the SNP arguably as damaging up there and to the rest of the country in terms of what they've been saying about the North Sea as well. And Reform stood, and we would have won that seat if they hadn't stood. But the truth is, five-party politics is here, and it's here to stay. We're always going to get these calls to stand down in particular areas, but I want to see a party that is going to tackle the welfare bill. We're now spending more on welfare than we're getting in income tax. I want to see a party that's got a proper plan for defence. Reform don't even have a defence spokesperson. I want to see a party that has worked out how to cut stamp duty for every single person that wants to buy a home. We are the only people to put that on the ballot paper, and I think that should be put to the people of Bakerfield.
Claire, fantastic to have you on the show. Thank you for braving the weather to be with us. Claire Coutinho, MP, Shadow Energy Secretary and Shadow Minister for Equalities. If you're just joining us at 7:33, we have the breaking news that the rate of UK unemployment has risen to 5% in the 3 months to March. Unemployment is up. This is from the Party of Working People. We'll get reaction from a Labour MP live in the studio next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Talk Breakfast 7:36. Do you want Andy Burnham to be your next Prime Minister? A very entertaining text has come in from Cliff in Berkshire. Good morning, Mark. I think Keir Starmer will sabotage Andy Burnham by turning up to Makerfield and campaigning for him. That will scupper Burnham's chances. Cliff, thank you for that. Keep the feedback coming. Live in the studio, I'm delighted to welcome the Labour MP for St Austell and Newquay, Noah Law. Good morning, Noah.
Morning.
Congratulations on your victory at the election, and what a nice constituency.
Yeah, indeed. It's lovely. It's all sides of Cornwall all in one, I would say.
Yeah, nice part of the world. Campaigning there is no great burden, is it?
No, it's not too bad, but it is tricky to get around, and that's something I'm happy to talk about as well.
Well, yeah, that's very important. I know that's a massive issue in the southwest of the country. Great to have you in the studio. An unfortunate headline for the beginning of our conversation: the rate of UK unemployment has risen to 5% in the 3 months to March. This is not good news, is it?
Yeah, look, I think the Chancellor's been absolutely right to try and enact a sort of structural change in the economy that moves us from a kind of low pay, low productivity. It's really important that we value the 2.7 million people's rise in minimum wage. So that is a really good achievement, but we've just got to be very careful of moving several things at once, increases in pay, protections. There's a balance to be struck, and I've obviously got some views on where we might be able to make the labour market a little bit more dynamic.
Well, that needs to happen, doesn't it? Because we now have the highest youth unemployment in Europe and UK unemployment up to 5%. I mean, that doesn't sound like the party of working people, does it?
Yeah, look, obviously we've given working people a pay rise, and we're still well ahead of much of the Eurozone in terms of our rate of unemployment. But there's much more to be done for young people. That's why there's that focus on apprenticeships, and that's why I've said again we need to make that market more dynamic for those people getting that first step on the ladder. But there's still a lot to be done, and these things take time, and that's why we've just got to be mindful that these things pay, protections, productivity, that they move in concert.
Workers' rights and a decent minimum wage, I think, are policies that most people could unite around. Do you think, therefore, that what should have happened over the two budgets that we've had since Labour won the election should have focused on reducing the cost of the welfare state, reducing public spending, rather than the national insurance tax rate? Because what we've seen with the next tax rates is an increase in unemployment, businesses shuttering and lower growth. So do you think that the Nix tax raid was the big mistake?
I think we need to look again at Nix in future. Again, I've proposed some targeted ways we can intervene to reduce the Nix burden in a way that gets people into the labour market without just wholesale reversing it.
Because that's what's done for business, isn't it, the Nix tax raid?
I think part of it is the business cycle. I think, you know, in the background there's a lot of moving parts there which are putting pressure on businesses. So it's not in isolation like it's all of the Nix. I'm not saying that that's not a factor to consider. But yeah, we've got to try and loosen up that labour market for some people, for instance, getting their first step on the ladder. And it's also worth noting that when you boost the minimum wage, you actually reduce benefits, working people's reliance on benefits. So that's a really good position to be in.
Do you regret, though, that the hike in the minimum wage and the pay rise for young workers is causing youth unemployment? And is it therefore not counterproductive? Is it not the case that businesses hire young people because they're cheap, and if they're not cheap anymore, hire them, they will not?
Yeah, and again, I think what's been missed in some of this discussion is that actually that Nix rise didn't apply to a whole bunch of young people. So I think the Chancellor was actually quite smart in ensuring that under 21s, for instance, weren't impacted by that, and yet that's not what you would hear from businesses. So again,
it's still added to the overall burden on businesses, though, which will have impacted recruitment, won't it?
Look, net, what I'm interested in is a pay boost for workers. We're the Labour Party. I don't think anyone would have expected us to do anything different than boost the pay of 2.7 million workers. I'm really proud of that achievement. Clearly, there are second-order effects that need to be taken into account and need to be managed, and that's why I've, in particular, have been advocating for some refinements to our labour market and our fiscal policy.
And Noah Law, you've been very supportive of and loyal to the Prime Minister Keir Starmer, but we have the small matter now of the Makerfield by-election, and Andy Burnham, the Manchester mayor, may well be successful in his efforts to win that by-election. He's then back in the House of Commons. He will likely have a run at becoming Prime Minister. Would he have your vote?
Yeah, I think obviously there is no contest at the minute. I didn't ask for this contest. But I'm going to be up in Makerfield backing Andy every step of the way, and I think he can get it over the line there.
Now, it's not controversial for a Labour MP to support the Labour candidate in a by-election. However, it's quite a story for a Labour MP to back Andy Burnham to be our next Prime Minister. Is that your position?
I think, again, there's a lot of hurdles to be cleared. I'll be backing him in Makerfield. I think he'll do well amongst the members. I think he'll bring it home there. And look, I think Andy would make a great Prime Minister. If Andy can show me that he's going to do right by Cornwall, where I'm from, and give us the powers and investment we need, then I'm absolutely happy to back him.
Wow, well, there we have it, an exclusive on Talk Breakfast. Labour MP, a sitting Labour MP, a very popular Labour MP in the southwest of the country, backs Andy Burnham to be Prime Minister if he wins the Makerfield by-election. Of course, Noah, you're not going to be casual about Labour's chances of winning that. In fact, it's going to be a tight race, isn't it?
Yeah.
It most definitely is. So why do you like Andy Burnham? Why do you think he might have the qualities to be a successful Prime Minister?
I think at the end of the day, Andy's very focused on devolution and growing the economy by giving decision-making down to the local level. As I've said, I'd like to see his view on how we can do that in Cornwall. We've got a very strong view on how that needs to be done, on what our local growth opportunities are. And we need to unlock those. We need to move faster than what we have been doing. We've got a plan that's been sat on ministers' desks for a long time now. So I'd like to see what Andy Burnham has to say about that and unlocking some of our high growth industries to create those jobs.
Is he not Captain Flip-Flop, though? This is a guy that presented himself as a Blairite back in the day, then a Brownite, then a Corbynite. This guy has been on more journeys than Phileas Fogg.
I think the world's changed an awful lot in those times.
So has Andy. Big Andy's changed more than anyone.
I think what remains core to Andy's politics is a belief that the state should be dynamic, that it should be powerful, and that it should intervene to improve the lives of working people and create growth in the economy. I think that's the common thread, and that's something I believe in too.
And Noah, did you sign a letter backing Keir Starmer just over a week ago?
Yeah, look, I mean, again, I didn't want this contest. It's quite clear that...
I'm not going to lend you a tenner.
It's quite clear at this point, Mark, that the dam has burst and we've got to deal with the world as it is and not as we would like it to be.
But what's changed in a week?
What's changed in a week is it's quite clear now that, as I say, we've crossed that Rubicon. I mean, Andy has been approved to run by the NEC. As I say, I think he stands a very good chance in Makerfield. I think he stands a good chance among members. And again, I'm disappointed that we're having to have this conversation now, but I've got to level with my constituents as to what the reality of the situation is.
Do you regret writing that letter to Starmer? Because I can't imagine you thought he was Winston Churchill a week ago and now you don't.
No, look, I think Starmer's been a good leader for this country. In reality, there's always a perception and reality gap, and in this case, it's a particularly big one. But what's changed is obviously Andy has been approved to run in this election. As I say, there isn't a contest as it stands at the minute, but at the end of the day, we've got to level with the likelihood of what is ahead of us.
But why write a letter in support of the Prime Minister a week ago? Why not keep your counsel?
Well, to prevent that dam from bursting, it's clear at this point that it has.
So you essentially did your bit to save the boss, and now Burnham's on the scene, and it's a different story, a whole different political picture.
We've got to level with our constituents about that.
And what about Andy Burnham's positions? You know, we had the Brexit debate, didn't we? And he said that his aspiration is we would rejoin the EU. Similarly, he's going to stick to Rachel Reeves' spending plans. There is a perception emerging that this guy will tell any audience what they want to hear. Is Andy Burnham not simply Keir Starmer with a better hairdo?
No, I think they've both got...
Because he's got lovely hair.
They've both got lovely hair, and I think at the end of the day, as I said, with Andy, it's about getting that dynamism and that push into the apparatus of the state to deliver for people. It's about blasting through some of the process that exists in Whitehall and in Westminster that I've had the displeasure of seeing firsthand in my year in politics. I mean, most of my career is in the private sector and working closely with businesses, and to come in and see that beholdenness to process at various points rather than just cracking on and getting stuff done is quite frustrating sometimes. And if he can bust that open, as I said, my support for Andy is conditional on him being able to deliver that plan for Cornwall. But at the end of the day, he talks a good talk about cracking on and getting the job done. If he can show that he can do that for us, then of course he has my full support.
You've made some very sensible remarks about the economy, and it's therefore not surprising that you've got experience in the world of business and the private sector, and you've acknowledged the impact of the national insurance tax rate across those two, the very first budget of Rachel Reeves, and other policies that have impacted the labour market. You talk about making it dynamic. These are all like brilliant thoughts that you've got. Are you not at odds with Andy Burnham, who talks about getting the bond markets, in check and not being in hock to the bond markets? These bond markets, they keep the lights on, don't they? We rely on Rolex-wearing financiers to bankroll this country.
I think that's the reality of why we need people like myself and others who are increasingly shifting towards that thinking of the kind of Manchesterite camp. That ultimately you do have to respect what the markets tell you.
That's a silly thing, isn't it, to say let's not be in hock to the bond markets. That's like me saying I'm not going to be in hock to Santander, who lent me a bit of money to buy a house.
I think the difference is that you've got to respect the bond markets, but you don't let them dictate your politics, if that makes sense. So in essence, you've got to listen to what the markets are telling you. You've got to. I think as Miata Fambulla put it quite well on the BBC the other day, what they respect most is a plan, actually, and that's why we've got to show that there's a clear plan to invest and over time, of course, get that debt into a better position, which of course has ballooned in recent times and leaves us very constrained. So that's why it's important to continue to respect those fiscal rules, even if you take a slightly different view on how you model some of the impacts of what you do. We've got to be less wooden about that. We've got to be cleverer about that.
Now, it seems that those notorious international bond markets, the Rolex-wearing financiers, aren't too keen on having a new Prime Minister or a new Chancellor. If Andy Burnham enters number 10, he will likely have someone else in number 11. It could spook the markets, and we're already up against it with low growth and growing unemployment and spiralling debt. And what about the Home Office? Because it's likely, isn't it, that if Andy Burnham becomes Prime Minister, he will thwart Shabana Mahmood's efforts to double the length of time that you must wait for settled status in this country. That's a brilliant policy, in my view, from the Home Secretary. It will all be undone by Andy Burnham, won't it?
I think we've got to be really careful as to how we keep those disincentives to people making that perilous.
It's a brilliant policy from the Home Secretary, isn't it?
I think
it's brave and it's the right thing to do.
Look, I would say I have some misgivings about ILR, which I've put to ministers around that. But I absolutely agree with Shabana Mahmood that we need disincentives to people making that horrendous journey across the Channel. And obviously the situation we're in is a byproduct of Brexit by and large, which is a painful irony when you consider who was behind that Farage et al. Were behind that.
Well, we've had open borders, you're absolutely right, under the Tories, that asleep at the wheel, catastrophic and an absolute disgrace. But that wasn't because of Brexit, it was in spite of Brexit. They could have closed the border. They didn't have the political will to do so. I don't think you can blame Brexit on the boats.
Well, look, it's obviously a very complex situation, lots of moving parts. Lots of things that we need to look at again. So, hats off to Shabana for doing that, for reopening that debate.
I think it's a brilliant policy. What I'm really nervous about is this excellent Labour policy may well be undone by Prime Minister Andy Burnham.
I think
I'm really worried about that.
There's much more road to run in that debate.
Will you fight for that policy? That you have to wait 10 years rather than 5 years for indefinite leave to remain?
I will fight for anything that works to stop people making that perilous journey. Again, we've got to study the evidence. We've got to work with the facts of what works to get those boat crossings
it's also
down.
The ILR is not just about the boats, though, is it? It's about the Boris wave, which comes with an enormous long-term cost to the country and my viewers and listeners. Shabana's tackling it. I think I'll have, a lot of my audience will be nervous that policy is going to go up in smoke if Andy wins.
Yeah, look, we have to retain much of that policy. I think my misgivings, as I've said, is around not sort of rowing back on the commitment that's been made to people.
The folk who already have it.
Yes, exactly. So people that have come here to serve work in our NHS, and we've got to respect that. It's not the British way to row back on that kind of commitment.
Noah Law, we know you're a busy man. We're going to let you run in just a moment. A couple of quick ones if you can. Do you think that the UK should rejoin the EU?
I don't think that's a discussion for today at all. I think as much as I have my own personal attachments and personal views that we should have, I think we actually should be pushing for a much closer alignment, a much clearer alignment, rather than this kind of transactional journey that we've been on that looks at almost bit by bit, SPS, youth mobility. We need to, again, this is one of those areas where we need to be bolder. We need to be out there pitching our vision to Europe of what a strong and mature partnership with the European Union looks like. I don't think in practice we can rejoin in the short term. And that's certainly a question for another day. As Andy put it, it's the last thing the country needs right now is to reopen that debate. And
Noah, before we let you go, rising unemployment, low growth, spiralling debts. We've had the Freebie Gate scandal. There are wider issues around the economy, and a new Prime Minister in less than 2 years. You lot are now worse than the Tories, aren't you?
When you say the Freebie Gate scandal, are you referring to the £5 million bung that Nigel Farage received the other day?
Well, he certainly has a case to answer for that.
Yeah. So
but why can't a multi-millionaire ex-lawyer like Keir Starmer pay for his own spectacles? You've got lovely bins on. You've got very smart spectacles. I bet you paid for those yourself.
Oh, I think there was something like 40 quid from Specsavers Dickens. So, you know.
Well, you got 20/20 vision on this, but I mean, it's not a good look, is it? When you lectured, or Labour politicians lectured us about the Tories previously, and what have we got? A leadership crisis in less than 2 years.
I thought this was a news show, Mark. In the news, I'm seeing the new news that Nigel Farage has been given a £5 million bung. I mean, I think that's...
Oh, I'm happy to talk about that.
That's how many times the value of a pair of specs? I mean, it's ludicrous. Let's quit these double standards around how we report on these things.
Oh, I'm happy to take Nigel to the cleaners on that one. That $5 million. What is the story there? Well, we'll be probing that later in the show because Layla Cunningham is coming in. But we've been thrilled to have you, Noah. Congratulations on becoming an MP. And we really appreciate your valuable time. Look forward to catching up soon. It's an exclusive on Talk Breakfast. Noah Law, the MP for St Austell and Newquay, backs Andy Burnham if, and it's a big if, he wins the Makerfield by-election. Do you want Andy Burnham to be your next Prime Minister? 7:53, this is Talk Breakfast.
It's a nutty canister, either way. I mean, look at the nut on it.
Bob Odenkirk! Saul was great. He was just a breath of fresh air. Amelia Clark!
Star Wars versus Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, definitely.
Okay.
I'm loyal.
Don't tell Alex Hassel!
In season 2, a lot of us get our clothes off.
You do know you did that in season 1?
Exactly, that's true, yes.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
7:56, Talk Breakfast. Lovely to have your company. Breaking news, the rate of UK unemployment rose to 5% in the 3 months to March. Doesn't sound like the party of working people to me, who are now out of work. We will bring further reaction. But can the new Director General of the BBC save the corporation? Who better to ask than former BBC star Sally Jones? Good morning, Sally.
Morning, Mark. It's a really tough time for the whole BBC, and particularly for Matt Britton, isn't it? There's just been so many own goals just lately. I'm a great supporter. I mean, I always loved the BBC when I was working there, but I just sometimes wonder how many own goals they can possibly score, at any one time.
Most definitely, and they're facing a war on several fronts, aren't they? Concerns about editorial standards and balance and bias, and then of course there's the funding issue as well.
Yes, I mean now it looks as though they've got to lose 2,000 jobs. That's something like I think 1 in 5 it could be, and save £500 million from something which is already cut to the bone. I mean, it saddens me to see all the cuts to BBC World Service, because it's such a sort of crucial part of the BBC and its soft power. That will be something that will be cut. There already, I think, a lot of the journalists are working on the edge of exhaustion. You can see them all, they're picketing, certainly the Radio 4 and World Service journalists are currently picketing because they're absolutely on their limits. They're being given yet more workload to do, yet more shifts. And I mean, I can remember how hard people had to work when I was there. Well, I think they're probably all having to do about twice as much now. And of course, it gets spread thinly. You get people less well trained. You get people who are really they're really singing to the choir, because one lot of people recruit those who tend to think the same way as they do. I mean, we've talked about this before, but the whole issue of impartiality seems to be ignored. You know, it's as though the Islingtonian elite at the top of the BBC seems to think that there is only one way of thinking about things like Brexit, immigration, the countryside. I mean, I've been noticing it. I've been involved, unfortunately, to my own detriment, in the Renters' Rights Bill with an appalling tenant, and watching the BBC coverage of the new Renters' Rights Act, which is pretty much decimating the sector. It's destroying it. You would think it was an unalloyed good thing.
And that is the problem with the BBC, not perceived as balanced. I wish we had longer. Sally, we will catch up soon. Do you want Andy Burnham to be your next Prime Minister? This is Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Three minutes past 8. Welcome to Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan in for the brilliant Jeremy Kyle today and tomorrow. Jezza is back on Thursday. A packed show for you this morning. And breaking as we come on air, bend it like Burnham. The King of the North is now the King of the U-turn, as Prime Ministerial hopeful Andy Burnham rose back on his ambitions to rejoin the EU and now says he will stick to Rachel Reeves's fiscal rules. But does that mean higher taxes for you and I to fund his socialist agenda? Meanwhile, children at school are being taught you cannot be racist to white people. Make it make sense. And is Nigel Farage about to cause the mother of all political upsets and win the Makerfield by-election? And my question to you at 4 minutes past 8 on a Tuesday morning is a very simple one. Do you want Andy Burnham to be your next Prime Minister? My phone number is 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK and your message to 87222. Leave us a voice note, and as the saying goes, let's talk. Now you can hear us on the radio, DAB+, in app and online. You can also watch us, and you are watching in record numbers. Just head to YouTube, search Talk, and you'll be able to see my amazing guests. So much to get through. Linda in Stalybridge. Good morning, Mark. Why don't these Labour people understand? We, the working people, we have given the working people more money in their pocket. Then they're out of work because the business now has closed because they cannot afford it. It's not like all the public sector jobs. They just put up everyone's tax to pay for them. Linda, thank you for that. Isabel Oakeshott is Talk's international editor. Good morning, Isabel.
Good morning.
Great to see you. Can I get your reaction to the breaking news this morning that the rate of UK unemployment has risen to 5% in the 3 months to March? No one's surprised.
I'm really not surprised. I mean, in fact, what did surprise me is that the GDP figures weren't worse when they came out. I think it was about a week ago, and they actually showed a slight uptick. I mean, nothing to be breaking out the champagne, but nonetheless, it was better news for the country and for Rachel Reeves. But the unemployment has skyrocketed to 5%, doesn't surprise me at all, because this government has made it so unattractive to employ people. I mean, they just lay burden upon burden on employers, on small businesses. And the latest, of course, is this new workers' rights legislation. They did row back a bit from giving people first day rights to take their employers to a tribunal for unfair dismissal, which was patently insanity. But there are still crazy things in there, like the immediate first day right to claim parental leave. I mean, that is just completely ludicrous. I mean, words are almost failing me here. Imagine that you run a little business, whether it just, for example, a corner shop, and you need some extra help, and you go through all the wretched red tape of taking someone on, all the compulsory signing on to pension schemes that they may or may not want, and you don't know whether this new person is going to be with you for 3 days or 3 years or hopefully even longer. You have to go through all of that. And yet on day one or day two, they can say, just something I didn't mention, but we recently had a child and I want to take a few months off unpaid leave. Are you serious? All this does is make employers think, well, I'm just not going to bother taking people on.
Most definitely, I couldn't agree more. Andy Burnham, of course, he's the mayor of Greater Manchester, but they call him the King of the North. It looks like he's the King of the U-turn, Isabel. He's rowed back on his ambitions for the UK to rejoin the EU, partly because Makerfield is a Leave constituency. He's also said he will stick to Rachel Reeves' spending plans, which probably means higher taxes for you, myself and our audience.
Well, I love the way you put it earlier, bend it like Burnham. I love that. His position on Brexit is getting a little bit flexible, isn't it? I mean, he clearly recognises that whilst it's not exactly the number one topic on the lips of voters in Makerfield, this was a very Leave constituency. And, Wes Streeting has tried to make it awkward for him by saying that he would campaign for a different relationship with the EU. We know that that's where Keir Starmer stands. So Andy Burnham is having to kind of do a little bit of some gymnastics there, some verbal gymnastics to try to tone down his position, which I think we all know what it is.
And Isabel, I know you've got no issue personally with Andy Burnham, and he's probably better at politics than Keir Starmer, but he's hardly the knight in shining armour for Britain, is he?
Well, I think it's really important to talk to people who actually live in the North about whether they see him as king of the North. And I think this whole moniker is it's a sort of rather patronising, snobby London thing, where we somehow have got to a point where certain people think that just because he's a slightly above average politician, he's nice looking and he's certainly more personable than Keir Starmer, he's some kind of king of the North. I think the North could come up with many other monarchs, political monarchs, that would be more impressive than Andy.
Most definitely. Now, Isabel, what are your thoughts on this by-election? Do you think it's reforms to lose?
I mean, I haven't been up there myself, but my colleague Christian has spent all of Friday there, and we were talking all through the day about what he was finding, and he didn't really find anyone that was pro Andy Burnham. Equally, Reform had about 50 activists in the constituency on Sunday, led by my partner Richard Tyson. He reported back that the reception was incredible. Now, he doesn't always say that. He might come back and say, actually, it was so-so. And we tend to be pretty cautious when it comes to by-elections. So from those two bits of evidence and their, real-time evidence of people that have spent all day talking to people, I really think Andy Burnham has got quite a mountain to climb here. It is not at all in the bag for him. If I had to put money on it now, I would say that Reform will win this.
Fascinating. Well, Andy Burnham has been speaking in the last 24 hours about the direction of the country. Take a listen.
We can't go on with a bloated national state and a malnourished local one. It is time for public servants to be transferred into local authorities and combined authorities to give them the capacity and the agency to get things done. This is how we underpin the next decade of devolution in the north of England.
Isabel, this is probably a difficult question for anyone to answer, but would the country's fortunes improve or become worse under Prime Minister Andy Burnham?
I don't think they'd improve dramatically. I mean, I think that perhaps national morale might be in slightly better spirits because we wouldn't have a human cardboard box walking around representing us. I think we might feel a little bit more cheerful about the fact we've got somebody who can communicate a bit better. But I don't think that he would alter the fundamentals. I mean, he's not talked at all, to my knowledge, in recent days about what he would do to tackle mass uncontrolled immigration, to stop the boats, to deal with a bloated welfare state. On the contrary, seems to be talking about making the state bigger, if anything. It's the last thing we need to do.
Most definitely. Well, looking at the Mail today, page 6 and 7 of the Mail have an expose on Andy Burnham's positions on the redistribution of wealth, council housing. Well, you're going to have to control immigration if it's worth building new social housing, nationalising everything, price controls, devolution, Brexit, reindustrialisation. We know where this guy stands. The problem I've got, Isabel, is if he becomes Prime Minister, he is likely to take the country in a leftward direction, something that we cannot afford.
I agree with that, but I see it in a slightly more long-term way. I mean, I've long ago written off the hope of this government, any Labour government, tackling the fundamental things that need to be done to save our country from the pit that it's in. And I feel that the worse it gets and the more left it lurches under successive Labour Prime Ministers, the better chance there is for the kind of solution that I think needs to be in place, which is a right-wing government.
Well, I completely agree. I think the country is crying out for some conservative policies, Isabel. In fact, we've been waiting over a decade for that. Another concern I've got about Prime Minister Burnham, and it's worth framing it in those terms, because if he wins the by-election, he will be our next Prime Minister, in my view. I'm concerned about immigration. One of the good policies from this government and the Home Office has been the decision to double the length of time that you will wait for settled status indefinitely to remain, from 5 years to 10 years. Under Shabana Mahmood, you've got to speak the language to a high standard, be economically productive and not have a criminal record. It's likely that if Andy gets in, he will thwart that policy. It may not see the light of day.
Well, that would be a dreadful retrograde step. I mean, I did hear you talking about that to a Labour MP on your show earlier, and you were pushing him to say whether he would fight for that policy to be maintained. And I think he stopped well short of saying that he would. I can't wait for Shabana Mahmood to actually do some of these things and for them to make a demonstrable difference. She's very good at making announcements that sound as if they're going to lead to great changes. But at the moment, there is no evidence of any positive change. I mean, she would point to what the government would call a very significant drop in the backlog of asylum claims. But I'm certain that the reason that that backlog has diminished is because even more people are just being nodded through.
It is very possible, isn't it, that Andy Burnham could get found out as Prime Minister?
Oh, I mean, not just possible, absolutely probable. I don't think he would embarrass us on the world stage. And in a sense, Keir Starmer doesn't totally embarrass us. I mean, I find his cowardice and reluctance to lead from the front on certain international issues pretty cringe. And we don't even want to go there on the Chagos Islands.
Yeah.
But I do, Andy Burnham is a respectable figure. It's not Boris going over to America looking like he just got out of bed. But I don't think he's not a figure with immense gravitas. He's not a deep intellect. I'm not saying that you necessarily have to be a deep intellect to be Prime Minister. And I don't think he's particularly radical either. I think he's a sort of slightly better than good. And I like him a lot.
Well, isn't he just Starmer with a better hairdo?
I heard you say that earlier. What's with the fixation on the hairdo?
Well, he's got an excellent mane, hasn't he? I think old Starmer uses too much Brill cream, but he's a more presentable, more polished version of Starmer, isn't he? Another person in number 10 with no ideas, no original thoughts, just a desire to have the top job.
Well, I think that his record in coming days and weeks will be very, very scrutinised, and quite rightly. What has he actually achieved in Manchester? I mean, that place is a really, really tough place to live for many people, and you only have to look at the state of the town centre. I love Manchester. It's a great city, but the town centre is ravaged. The homelessness, which I happen to know is one of Andy Burnham's key things that he really does know about. Still, there are so many tents all around Manchester city centre. The crime, the drugs, the shoplifting. It doesn't really inspire a great deal of confidence.
I totally agree with you. To call him the King of the North is to gaslight people in the Northwest and in Manchester whose lives have actually got worse since he took charge, and particularly since this government got in. Here's a voice note, Isabel, from Dan on this by-election.
Morning, Mark. Forget about the Tories. We need Restore Britain to stand down their candidate for Makerfield. Because just like in a general election, they definitely can't win it, Restore, but they can certainly prevent Reform from winning it, which is madness because we all know they agree on pretty much everything. And Rupert Lowe is just doing it because he hates Nigel now and he needs to stop.
Interesting voice note from Dan. Thank you for that. Isabel, do you think it would be helpful if the parties on the right, Restore, and perhaps the Conservatives did not run a candidate to give Reform a clean run at this seat?
Well, I know that there are significant figures inside the Conservative Party who are inclined to that way, you know, that they don't privately, and I think Jacob Rees-Mogg has actually said it publicly, that they don't think that the Conservatives should stand a candidate. Now, there's no way the Tory party leadership is going to go with that. But what they could do, there will be a Tory party candidate on the ballot paper. But what they can do is just basically not really do any campaigning. You know, it could be more just a paper candidate. These paper candidates often pick up more votes than other parties would like. But nonetheless, they could, you know, the Tories could be helpful here if they wanted. Unfortunately, there's no prospect whatsoever of Rupert Lowe taking that attitude. Your caller was absolutely right. This is all a point of principle for him. It's all about trying to undermine Nigel Farage's operation. And I think that is very regrettable because, you know, he and his party can't win across the country, won't win. And they are just taking votes from Reform. But nonetheless, I defend his democratic right to do that. It does take guts for anyone to start new political parties. He's picked up a bit of traction. There will never, by the way, be any alliance between Reform and Restore. There is a lot of bad blood there, and you know, Rupert Lowe is undermining everything that Nigel and Richard are trying to achieve.
Isabel Oakeshott, briefly if you can, the international bond markets, the Rolex-wearing financiers upon whose largesse we rely, seem to prefer that Starmer remains Prime Minister, considering him the lesser of two evils. Do you think we're in that situation now where Starmer is the least bad option for the country until the election?
I think that could be the case economically, although I don't think a Wes Streeting premiership would particularly spook the markets in the way that the possibility of an Andy Burnham or Ed Miliband or Angela Rayner premiership would. You know, it's just the whole better the devil you know thing. What markets hate is uncertainty. And we are now in a very prolonged period of uncertainty. Unfortunately, the by-election timeframe is pretty limited. I mean, there was a scenario where that by-election might not actually have been called for a while. But nonetheless, we don't have a leadership contest yet, officially. We've got months of this, and the markets don't like that.
Now, you're not a spokesperson for Nigel Farage, and I'm looking forward to being joined in the studio at 9 a.m. by Layla Cunningham, who is Reform's mayoral hopeful in London. But just politically, Isabel, it appears that Nigel Farage is having trouble shaking off this story around a £5 million donation. Do you anticipate a time in which this story goes away?
Well, of course, Nigel's critics want to keep this story at the forefront. I mean, I'm already bored of it. I honestly don't see why it's anyone's business how Nigel paid for a house. You know, why should people know how he paid, what pot of money he used? You know, he is a guy that has had a long track record of doing very well out of his media work, for example. He's well paid by GB News. That is in the public domain. I'm not breaching any confidences there. He's got a number of other investments. He did well before he went into politics. Can people just stop snooping and prying and pushing and just obsessing about this? Nigel has given up more than a quarter of a century for public service and taken a great deal of flack and threats to his life and more besides, and been debanked and God knows what other price he's had to pay for what he's trying to do, which is save the country. And this obsession with how he pays for what, and you know, where did this money come from, where did that come from? He's not in government. He's a backbench MP. He happens to be leading a political revolution, but he has no power to award contracts. There's no way that he can be corrupt in that regard. So what exactly are people hoping to find?
I don't disagree with you on that, but Nigel Farage is quoted as saying in the past, Nigel, there's no money in politics. Well, he wouldn't have picked up that cheque for $5 million if he wasn't a political figure. So it turns out there's quite a bit of money in politics for Nige.
It turns out that sometimes your friends look after you and there can be money in friendship.
Well, they wouldn't be £5 million if Farage wasn't a political figure. That's the point, isn't it?
Well, I don't think when he decided to carry on or come back into politics, he'd already been given that money. You know, I know for a fact that when he was given that money, he was in no way, shape or form decided as to whether he was going to come back to frontline politics. And yeah, you know, he's been open that this money was linked to his political profile. He said it's to do with his security, and he's also said it was a thank you for Brexit. Both of those things I think are entirely legitimate. Look, wouldn't we all love to have a £5 million gift? I would ask anybody who's judging about this, if you were offered in return for the sacrifices you had made for public service for this country, if you were offered a £5 million no strings attached gift, look me in the eye and tell me that you would reject that. How many people would reject that? Would you, Mark?
Most definitely not. In fact, double it to 10 because I'm worth it. Isabel, fantastic to see you. Or whatever we're paying you, it ain't enough because we love having you on the show. Look forward to catching up soon. My thanks to Isabel Oakeshott, Talks International editor. If I was bunged a load of cash, though, I would certainly be upfront about it. There is a question mark about how exactly Nigel paid for that house. Isabel's right. It doesn't matter how he pays for his house. He's a private citizen at that time. The issue is he's on the record as saying it was the ITV money from I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. Well, it appears that no dividend was paid from his business to purchase the house. So what's the story? Morning Glory. I'll be asking Layla Cunningham very shortly. 8:23, this is Talk Breakfast. A simple question this morning. Do you want Andy Burnham to be your next Prime Minister?
It's a nutty canister, either way. I mean, look at the nut on it.
Bob Odenkirk!
Saul was great. He was just a breath of fresh air. Amelia Clark!
Star Wars versus Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, definitely. I'm loyal.
Don't tell Alex Hassel!
In season 2, a lot of us get our clothes off.
You do know you did that in season 1.
Exactly, that's true, yeah.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
8:26, you are listening to Talk Breakfast, and breaking news. The rate of UK unemployment has risen to 5% in the 3 months to March. Let's get reaction from one of the most respected economists and journalists in the country, Liam Halligan. Good morning, Liam.
Nice to be with you, Mark.
The news that unemployment has gone up is as surprising as the Catholicism of the Pope and the proclivity of bears to relieve themselves in the woods.
It is. So unemployment was 4.2% when Labour took office in July 2024. This is what happens when you tax an economy to within an inch of its life. The International Monetary Fund, as well as warning the Labour Party that there is a bond market crisis around the corner unless they get real, is also saying that Britain has reached the limit of the tax that it can take. So Labour's increased taxes by £75 billion a year since it took office. That's a 7% increase in taxation. When you think that most businesses, their margins are a lot less than 7%, the profit that they make that allows them to actually be in business, you can understand why so many small and medium-sized enterprises in particular feel so squeezed, why high streets are increasingly looking desolate, and why growth is pretty slow. And as long as growth stays slow, our public finances will get worse, and the dangers of us falling off the edge of a cliff economically will only increase. I say all this, Mark, with regret.
Most definitely. Workers' rights legislation, a hike in the minimum wage. Unfortunately, economic history teaches us, Liam, that the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
It does. Let's just look at the welfare bill. I think a lot of people across the country, while they want the people who are vulnerable, people who are generally sick and disabled to have support, I think Britain's a very decent place. Most people want that. There's also a growing sense that far too many people are abusing the system. There's too much fraud. There's too many people sitting at home all day. The incentives are stacked badly, almost willing you to stay at home rather than going out to work, even though a lot of people want to go out to work for their own self-esteem and their own well-being. But look at the numbers. I've got some numbers here. Welfare spending over this Parliament under Labour is due to increase from £330 billion a year to £406 billion a year. That's an increase of a fifth. And sickness and disability welfare spending is due to increase from £83 billion a year to £110 billion a year. That's an increase by a third. And yet still the vast majority of the leadership candidates that want to take over from Keir Starmer want more. They keep saying that the bond markets, the international institutions and investors around the world that fund an increasingly out of control British state, they keep saying that the bond markets will, quote, have to get in line with Labour's programme. The ignorance and arrogance of that statement is not only galling, Mark, it's dangerous, because I'm long enough in the tooth to remember, and I suspect you are too, despite your boyish good looks, looking nice in the tie this morning, by the way.
Thank you.
We remember the mid-1970s. We remember joy and fun and seasons in the sun. We also remember when Britain had to go cap in hand to the International Monetary Fund for a bailout and the years that it took to recover from that. If that happens in the UK, and we are definitely approaching that point, you're going to see a massive spike in inflation. You're going to see a massive plunge in the currency. You're going to see living standards dropping like a stone. And in that kind of a crisis, always it's the poor who suffer most.
Most definitely. Is a day of reckoning coming? Could the UK face a Greece-style moment between now and the next general election?
Well, for my sins, I wrote the Spectator Diary in the latest edition, and I said that I was in danger of becoming like a sandwich board man, like those Victorian era purveyors of gloom standing on street corners in East London back in the day. But I don't apologise for being a sandwich board man, because somebody has to talk about this stuff, and so much of our political media class are ignoring the economic reality, sticking their fingers in their ear, la, 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 we can just spend more money, that's the right thing to do. But it's clear that very serious people around the world, like the International Monetary Fund, here in the UK, the National Institute of Economic and Social Research, probably our leading independent economic think tank, look at the markets. Increasingly, international pension funds, insurance companies, other governments are charging our government more and more to borrow. We're an outlier. Our borrowing costs have gone up far more than any other major economy in the world, not just since this war in Iran started in late February, but actually since July 2024, when Labour took office. Why? Because they keep jacking up borrowing and spending and think they can pay for all that with more tax. But when you tax an economy to within an inch of its life, as the IMF is now warning, then you slow it down to the point where activity ceases. And then with higher tax rates, you get less tax revenue. This is basic A-level economics. I wish people in Downing Street understood it.
I don't know how many wake-up calls we have to have, Liam. For example, an underreported stat, which is that a sixth of the people, 1 in every 6 on the Sunday Times rich list last year, have left the country. I don't know how Labour can spin that as a win, given the fact that you, myself and our viewers and listeners will pick up the tab for the tax they paid. You've mentioned too many people are at home not working. The Tories unearthed another stat, which is that 600,000 households are better off at home not working than going out to work and putting a shift in. So are Labour love bombing the lazy?
I think there's something in that, but I think, you know, there are lots of decent people across the country living in parts of the UK where there isn't much work because the tax incentives are stoked against enterprise, and they're making rational decisions for themselves and their family with childcare costs so high. Why do we tax childcare? I've no idea. Childcare costs should come out of your income before taxation, especially if that childcare allows mum and dad to go to work. But a lot of people, they're making rational decisions, and the way the incentives are stacked in our economy, it's often rational to stay at home. You'll have more money for yourself and your family, more chance of getting above, keeping bread on the table and a roof over your head if you stay on benefits. It's the way the system is stacked. Yes, of course, there are quite a lot of people who are abusing the system. You get sickfluencers on the internet. What does that mean? It's people who show people for a fee how to rig their applications so they get sickness and disability benefit. We have doctors signing people off sick for a lifetime with a stroke of the pen. That's insane. Why should doctors do that? Of course, doctors are just going to sign people off. It's the state. It's other people's money. What do they care? We need to really crack down on this, because not only are we eroding work incentives, not only are we assigning increasing numbers of young people to the scrap heap for life, we are also bankrupting ourselves, and we are undermining our ability as a society to responsibly and morally help those people who actually need help. I increasingly talk to and hear from people who do need help with sickness and disability benefit, who do need help with social care, who do have genuine claims to the state and society. Sure. We want to put our arms around them and help them. But when there's so much fraud, when so many people of working age who could work are incentivized not to work because of this kind of, almost suicidal empathy of the left to just keep shoveling out more money, then there's a problem. And in the end, I think what a lot of people in the Labour Party and elsewhere on the left do is they're telling themselves they're being moral and right by just shoveling out all these benefits. But what they're actually doing is they're making clients they're making client voters, making people massively dependent on the state. So they keep voting for those parties who maintain and increase that level of state dependence. It's an incredibly cynical thing politically to do. It's immoral, and it's also reckless and irresponsible because it is literally driving this country towards a crisis. And it's not just me saying this, it's many, many serious people around the world. And it's a reality, Mark, that's reflected in the 10-year gilt yield and the long-term borrowing costs of this country. Long-term borrowing costs are now at a 30-year high, and Britain's long-term borrowing costs are higher easily than any other advanced large economy in the world, even though our actual debt level is middle of the pack. That's because the markets can see our cash flow is going wrong. We're spending almost everything we borrow on interest on our existing debt. That's madness.
It is madness. Briefly, Liam, the international bond markets seem to prefer that Starmer remains at number 10 and are concerned about a Burnham premiership. Do you worry for the economy if Andy Burnham becomes Prime Minister?
Well, I've known Andy Burnham for many, many years. We used to play in a football team together back in the day. You know, he's a bright bloke, right? You don't get from where he started in life to Cambridge unless you've got proper brains, and he has got proper brains. But I think with respect to Andy, he is genuflecting far too much to the left of the party. But, you know, for the reasons I've just said, his intellect is being outweighed by his ambition to be Prime Minister. But I'd say to him, do you really want to be the Prime Minister that takes Britain over the edge of an economic cliff? It's a noble aim to want to lead your country, but do you really want history to remember you that way? And I think markets are rightly concerned about a change of leadership. The only candidate that could be remotely more fiscally responsible than Starmer and Reeves, or less fiscally irresponsible than Starmer and Reeves, they put up borrowing and spending and taxation massively, is Wes Streeting. And I think with Wes Streeting's views on rejoining the European Union and the fact that a lot of his party see him as a right winger, in quotes, whatever, given that he's a sort of Blairite, I don't think he's got any chance of becoming Prime Minister anytime soon, unless the facts change. When the facts change, I'll change my mind. But at the moment, it looks like a left-wing candidate will take over from Starmer, and the markets rightly really don't like that. So for now, at least, the combination of Starmer and Rachel Reeves as Chancellor, at least they're paying some kind of lip service to the fiscal rule rather than just blowing them up, as a lot of people on the left of the Labour Party, both ministers and MPs, as well as, of course, Labour activists and trade unions, all those people will have a role in deciding who is the next Labour leader and therefore Prime Minister. And almost all of them are, frankly, economically illiterate and want ever more borrowing and spending.
Well, it's funny you should mention When the Facts Change, Liam, because Liam, of course, is the author of one of the finest and most popular Substacks in the country. Unmissable reading, When the Facts Change. Do subscribe. Well worth a read. Of course, Liam is the co-star of Planet Normal, the brilliant podcast, and a columnist at The Telegraph. Liam, have a good day and thank you so much for your time. 8:39, this is Talk Breakfast. Do you want Andy Burnham to be your next Prime Minister?
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. It's 8:41, and this is surely the headline of the day. Move to the left, and the UK will crash and burn them. An explosive and brilliantly written piece in the Sun newspaper by Ian Drury, who is a Sun columnist and joins me now. Good morning, Ian.
Good morning, Mark.
Well, the bottom line is that it's likely that Andy Burnham will be a better Prime Minister in presentational terms, but the devil's in the detail. What will he do if he wins power?
Well, the point we're trying to make, 3 points in the piece today, is one, the defence has been chronically and criminally underfunded for many years. You know, successive governments have skimped on the armed forces that they're so willing to send into battle or on operations. But the world is a more volatile place than it's been since World War II, and an urgent upsurge in spending on defence is needed. Starmer, to be fair, seems to understand that. He said in February, hard power is the currency of our age. But if fine words were weapons, we'd have the best equipped military in the world. He's looking to spend 18 billion as part of his bid to save his political skin.
Yeah.
But, the funding gap in the military is 28 billion. And the timetable for increasing military spending by the mid-30s is suggests the Labour have got their heads buried in the sand. The problem is our enemies are watching this. Now with Burnham, the second point we want to make is that Burnham is talking about renationalising the energy, water industry and other ex-public utilities. This left-wing renationalisation, it'll cost about $1 trillion. It's ruinously expensive, and yet there's this deafening silence on how to pay to rebuild the armed forces.
And actually, the utilities is not a national security issue, is it?
No, not at all. No, he's we want to know his plans to keep the country safe. We're in the middle of a leadership contest in all but name, and while he's pretending to be a local MP, the point we make today, he wants to be Prime Minister. He'll go into Parliament and almost immediately seek to topple Keir Starmer. So it is incumbent on him to tell the country how he will protect us. And I think the third point we're making is that this money is available. If we could slash the swollen welfare bill, we could invest.
You can rob Peter to pay Paul, and when the very existence of the country is at stake, that would be the right thing to do.
I think so. I completely agree with that. The welfare bill has surged to 3 billion, fueled by sickness, disability payments and other benefits. An 18 billion surge alone this year, which would be enough to pay for 200 fighter jets, 15 high-tech frigates, the salaries of 250,000 soldiers. We need to get a grip on this. And yes, we know that some claimants are, some have genuine claims. Of course they do. But voters are rightly angry that so much money is being shelled out on so many, skivers who stay at home while the military that keeps us safe is allowed to deteriorate. And the question is Labour willing to do that? Now, Burnham is going to be in hock to the trade unions, in hock to the left of his party. The suspicion, it's almost certain he won't do that.
Well, that's the problem. And you've spoken up so strongly and so articulate, in such an articulate fashion, about the importance of defence spending. It's not a politically advantageous thing to do for a Labour Prime Minister to boost defence spending, is it? It's the right thing to do, but it may not win you any votes.
That's true. There's Labour there has been a strain of anti-militarism and pacifism that's run through Labour for decades. Tony Blair himself was a member of CND, but one of the things Burnham talks about is reindustrialisation, building the industrial base of this country. And the defence industry, defence companies are largely based in Labour's old heartlands. The submarine yard of Barrow, the shipyards in Rosyth in Scotland. They build brilliant fighter jets and anti-drone warfare in Lancashire. And these are good jobs, highly skilled jobs, well-paid jobs.
Well, you're so right.
And
If Ed Miliband will have us believe that net zero produces jobs, well, military investment will do the same.
Absolutely, and it you're protecting the country at the same time. I think these would have been in the past and would be Labour vote winners, you would have thought.
Yeah.
But Labour, the left is unwilling to fund military at the expense of the welfare state.
And I actually think this idea of percentage of GDP is unhelpful, Ian, because actually with a shrinking economy that becomes a nonsensical metric. I wonder whether we need to actually look at the numbers. So we spend about 60-70 billion annually on our military, is that right at the moment?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, well, we need to at least double that, don't we?
I think in a volatile world you have to show some serious intent.
It's got to be 100 bill plus. I mean, let's call a spade a spade.
I think you do. I think you do. We ever since the end of the Cold War, we cashed in the peace dividend. I think at the end of the Cold War we were spending something like 6% of GDP on defence. If you've got to get back there if you want to, stave off the threats from China. Russia is not going to stop Ukraine if Putin can get away with it.
No. And it's not just planes and tanks, is it? It's cyber warfare, it's terrorism.
Absolutely, that's very true. The tech of the future is going to be at the heart of defence and security, but there's no real substitute for boots on the ground and the numbers.
Most definitely. So Andy Burnham, it depends whether he wins this by-election, but we need to have this conversation about Prime Minister Burnham, because if he prevails in Makerfield, he'll be in number 10, and this will be in his in-tray. How do you see it playing out if he becomes Prime Minister? Do you think that reality and ideology will collide and that he'll do the right thing?
I think so, yeah. Will he do the right thing? Ideology and reality will collide, and he's got a habit of U-turning on lots of things. We've seen that with Brexit and the EU this weekend, and how he's also at one step is saying we can't be in hock to the bond markets, and now he's saying he'll be fiscally responsible. So he's got that Starmerite habit of U-turning at the drop of a hat. Will he be allowed to? To boost defence spending by his backbenchers? That's the reality of it, isn't it? That's the billion-dollar question.
Ian, you suspect he won't.
Yeah.
That is a real worry. I've been enjoying your journalism for so many years. Of course, you are the former defence editor of The Mail, and my goodness, the Sun are lucky to have you. What a great piece in the paper today. Labour will tear us apart again, move to the left, and the UK will crash and burn them, particularly in relation to the defence of this country. Ian Drury, thank you for joining us, and we'll catch up soon.
Thank you
so much more to get through. Do you want Andy Burnham to be your next Prime Minister? 8:49, this is Talk Breakfast.
It's a nutty canister, either way. I mean, look at the nut on it.
Bob Odenkirk!
Saul was great. He was just a breath of fresh air. Amelia Clark!
Star Wars versus Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, definitely. I'm loyal.
Don't tell Alex Hassel!
In season 2, a lot of us get our clothes off.
You do know you did that in season 1.
Exactly, that's true, yeah.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Lovely to have your company, Mark Dolan, on Talk Breakfast, in for the brilliant Jeremy Kyle today and tomorrow. Do you want Andy Burnham to be your next Prime Minister? We have an unnamed texter who said, "Hi Mark, I hate it when Labour say we've given a pay rise to millions of people. No, you've forced businesses to pay, and it's showing with the unemployment figures." Well, if you're just joining us, let me tell you that unemployment has risen to 5%. Hardly the party of working people. It's the party of people out of work with no job. However, let me bring you some very positive news at 8:52 on a Tuesday morning. The FIFA World Cup 2026 is almost here, and thanks to Adidas, the tournament's official match ball supplier, our friends at Talk Sport are giving you the chance to be there. Adidas are sending you and a friend to Dallas to see England versus Croatia live on June the 17th, with return flights, accommodation, spending money, tickets, and your very own Adidas official match ball trionder. Be at England's first game in the FIFA World Cup at one of the world's best stadiums. Ready to get that winning feeling? Here's how to enter.
Get ready for that winning feeling. For your chance to win, head to talksportwin.com or text TALK to 83338. Texts and online entries cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 1st of June 2026 at 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus UK residents only. This is a network promotion. See full terms and conditions at talksport.com/win. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now. Full T's and C's at win.talk.tv.
Congratulations to the eventual winner and good luck one and all. You are listening to Talk Breakfast. Andy Burnham, do you want him to be your next Prime Minister? Martin in Lichfield says, "Good morning, Mark. Andy Burnham is the great pretender. A bit flash and a bit more charismatic than Starmer. But he's already the not going to rejoin the EU guy." Well, fat chance. When speaking honestly in September last year, that's exactly what he said he would do, is take Britain back into the EU. Another manifesto lie. He will be as hated as much as Starmer in no time. This country cannot stand much more of the politics of envy, and this government is full of ideologies that hurt people who get out of bed and try their best. The alarm clock Brits. Andrew, hi Mark, as much as I'd love to see reform take Makerfield, the best gauge is usually the bookies. Labour are now odds on. That is not good for reform. Nicola in Norfolk, good morning Nicola, thank you so much for your lovely text. Nicola has said, "I enjoyed your Labour MP guest. The new key Labour MP is, let me get it right. Yes, Noah Law is a rare beast," says Nicola, "a Labour MP prepared to appear on Talk, but sadly he seemed to be doing nothing more than being like a Starmer clone." Nicola, thank you for that. Get more of your feedback shortly. School children are currently being taught that black people cannot be racist to white people. Is that true? Let's get the views of broadcaster, historian and fellow and broadcaster at the New Culture Forum, Rafe Hadel-Mancu. Good morning, Rafe.
Good morning to you.
Is it true that you cannot be racist towards white people?
Well, you know, I've been warning for years now about the fact that we have the indoctrination of youth starting not at university, but starting in our primary schools. You know, Aristotle said, "Give me a boy of 7 and I'll show you the man." Unfortunately, we now have a system whereby we're indoctrinating children from the age of 5 up to 21. And it's deeply, deeply damaging. Of course, black people and Asians and others can be racist. White people didn't invent racism. This is one of the other things people say now in schools, is that the Portuguese invented racism when they first went to Asia. Racism has been a global phenomenon for millennia. You know, and in fact, when Portuguese explorers went to Japan, the Japanese referred to them as barbarians and depicted them as monkeys. Long before notions of Western racism came about, you had the Japanese thinking they were superior to everybody else. Anti-black racism in the Arab world existed for more than a 1,000 years, in part because of the Islamic slave trade, which saw millions of Africans going to the Muslim world. Sub-Saharan Africans were regarded as the lowest slaves. In modern-day China, of course, we have horrendous levels of racism. In India, racism is rife. India is probably the world's most racist country, especially towards Africans and others. In China, of course, they called slaves Kunlun from Africa, and they thought of them as frightening and ignorant. But also within Africa, you have huge amounts of racism as well, and a long history of that. In Central Africa, the Bantu were persecuted and enslaved. They enslaved the Pygmies for centuries. And in Somalia, the Bantu themselves were persecuted. In Ethiopia, the Abyssinians hunted a group called the Shakila, who was sort of from the Nile, dark-skinned peoples. So it's everywhere in the world. And as I like to say often, you know, the world's least racist countries are actually found in the West. Sweden, Britain, Canada, these are the world's least racist countries. It's time we stopped all of this nonsense. This is baseless, factless indoctrination of our youth by an increasingly left-wing teaching profession. 90% of teachers are of the left. If we really want to get some balance back into the school system, we have to change the way teachers are trained.
Is anti-white racism a right-wing conspiracy theory, Rafe?
We can see the evidence all around us. I mean, this is the great irony. This school is now teaching people about white privilege. I would say the experience of many people who've tried to apply for jobs in this country has been one of black privilege. There are jobs which white people aren't eligible for. We know that there are lots of programs designed to essentially give a leg up to ethnic minorities, whereas, of course, all of the evidence shows that it's white working class children. It used to be just white working class boys, but now also white working class girls are falling behind the system.
They are, in fact, underrepresented. So if you're going to play the skin colour game, you would have diversity in favour of young white people, ironically. And that's why this is all such a nonsense.
Yes, we've got the Royal Air Force saying that they don't want to hire stupid white men as pilots. I mean, the evidence of anti-white racism is rampant all around us. And of course, as befits a country with two-tier justice and two-tier policing, which also, of course, disfavors white people in the justice system and in the police system. But we also have a wider system whereby it's perfectly fine for ethnic minorities to make racial remarks about white people. But if the tables were turned and someone made a similar reference around an ethnic minority, they would immediately be fired, if not arrested.
Call me old-fashioned, Rafe. Is it time to completely ignore skin colour? Is that crazy? Have I lost the plot?
Well, that, of course, was Martin Luther King Jr.'s great plea to everybody to judge somebody on the character of their soul, not on the colour of their skin. Unfortunately, we have become racialized. We were in a lovely position in the 1980s and 1990s when we saw people like Linford Christie or Daley Thompson performing or in sports. We never saw their skin colour, or Frank Bruno. They were British. We were past that point in our lives. It's been the left's obsession with all of this. It's been the government's forcing mass migration on us that have actually made us much more sensitive and aware of race, and now that's all we see. And even
Rafe,
myself.
We always love having you on the show. You are a true legend. We'll catch up soon. Rafe Hadelman-Koo, Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Three minutes past 9, top of the morning, Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan in for the brilliant Jeremy Kyle today and tomorrow. Jez is back on Thursday. And breaking this morning, bend it like Burnham. The King of the North is now the King of the U-turn, as Prime Ministerial hopeful Andy Burnham rose back on his ambitions to rejoin the EU, and he now says he'll stick to Rachel Reeves's rules around spending. But could that mean higher taxes for you and I to fund his socialist agenda? And is Nigel Farage about to cause the mother of all political upsets and win the Makerfield by-election? And our question to you this morning is a very simple one. Do you want Andy Burnham to be your next Prime Minister? My phone number is 0344 499 1000, and you're going to need that number because it's time now, as always on a Tuesday, for Call Cunningham. Your chance to put a call in and speak to Layla Cunningham, who is Reform UK's mayoral hopeful in the capital. So it's all happening 9:04. Lovely to have your company. In the studio is the aforementioned Layla Cunningham. Good morning.
Good morning.
So Burnham mania sweeps across Britain.
You know, I was thinking about this the other day because actually yesterday. So you see all the cabinet ministers go on TV in the morning and they're like, we fully support the Prime Minister. He's the most resilient Prime Minister we've ever had. He's not going anywhere. You know, I fully back him.
They sign a letter.
And then they're like, of course, we got to fight this by-election. But mate, you had the by-election. It was your seat. They're fighting, you know, they're campaigning with the guy who, if he wins, will replace the Prime Minister that they tell the world he's not going anywhere and we have full trust in him. Honestly, they really take us for fools. It's pure contempt for the voters.
Is your party, Reform UK, going to thwart Andy Burnham's political ambitions? Do you think you can win that by-election?
Of course we can win that by-election.
What are you hearing?
Well, I'm hearing a great response. We've got amazing... the Reform Army is out in force. I'm going to go down a lot. The thing is, Mark, voters are not... They're not something that you just exchange. You know, you don't just suddenly be like, you know what, I want that seat, give it to me. I'm going to cost a huge amount of public money. If you give your seat up, I'll give you a really cushy job once I'm PM. It stinks, you know. And I think the voters are like, who do you think we are? You're just going to interchange us?
Well, it's quite interesting that you mention the cost, because if Andy Burnham wins that by-election, it's a big if. There will need to be an election for a new mayor of Greater Manchester. The sum total will be £5 million, and that's £5 million that won't go on fixing potholes and paying for police.
But they don't care, you know, and I just think the entitlement of Andy Burnham, who apparently is a great mayor of Manchester, yet he's completely ditching Manchester onto greater things. And I think people are sick and tired of it being, you know, the next rung in the career ladder. I think this is really shambolic, this by-election, and I think people are going to recognise that this by-election is called for someone's political ambitions and not for the people of Makerfield. And Reform's the only... I mean, we thrashed them in the locals.
There is likely not going to be an election for 2 to 3 years because turkeys don't vote for Christmas. Would my viewers and listeners be better off with Starmer than Burnham in number 10?
I mean, the thing is, it's the same product, just a different salesman. You know, it's the same broken model of mass migration, high tax, high welfare, low growth, high energy costs. And I feel that with Burnham, we might go even further.
Well, this is a guy that doesn't want Britain to be in hoc to the international bond markets. Well, I think you'll find that the Rolex-wearing financiers are keeping the lights on in the country. So I don't think we can really sort of get them in line. I think we rely on their generosity to fund our welfare state.
100%, you know, because it's definitely not the private sector, because we've pushed the private sector to the brink. We've had the biggest exodus of millionaires from this country. And what people don't realise is if the top payers leave, it's the bottom payers that end up paying everything that the top payers were meant to pay. And that's what you're seeing now. But also he talks about rejoining the EU. It's so tone deaf. You know, where he's running is that they wanted to leave. We had a biggest democratic mandate. And they just look people in the eye and go, you know what, you got it wrong. We're still kind of angry at you for getting it wrong. So us little, you know, Labour elite, we want to go back. And we know our base and our voters don't, but who cares about them?
Well, if you're talking about rejoin the EU, you're not a serious politician, are you?
No.
Because we had the vote in 2016. We were out by 2020. Our economic growth has actually outpaced Germany's. Yes, we haven't exactly prospered, but really it's been status quo. And it remains in the gift of a future administration to deploy the benefits of Brexit. But if you're talking about Brexit in 2026, I mean, that's not where the public are at. People are not down the pub talking about rejoining the EU, are they?
No, of course not, because people don't want to rely on the EU for success. You know, you have to have a government that believes in Britain. We don't have to believe in Britain attached to the EU. How about just believing, when Starmer said, you know, we want the EU at the heart of Britain. No, I want Britain at the heart of Britain. You know, how about really believing in your country that we don't need the EU to prosper? And that's the thing, because they don't believe in the country. They don't believe that we can be successful on our own 2 feet. And for me, honestly, that is why I joined Reform, because I believe Nigel's the only patriot that really believes that Britain is strong and Britain should be as strong as it can be. We don't need other countries. I mean, we do as a trade, but we don't need other countries telling us what to do. As a trade agreement, that's great.
Well, of course, the press will have you believe that we somehow can't trade with the EU. We have record exports to the EU. We've had robust growth compared to Eurozone countries, and the UK still, to this day, even under this Labour government, enjoys more inward investment than Germany, Italy and France combined. So EU, I don't think we need EU. Your chance to book your place on the show. Your questions for Layla Cunningham, 0344 499 1000. Book your place on the show. Jeff has the following question for you, Layla. Does Reform need a celebrity candidate or a local candidate to take on Burnham in Makerfield?
I think I don't know who they're going to pick, actually. But
do you think it should be Zia? He's a big talent, isn't he?
I can't comment on who the candidate's going to be, because I don't actually know.
Would you like it to be Zia? Isn't it time he got into the House of Commons? I think he could make Merry Helen there. Couldn't he?
Zia would be a fantastic MP. You know, he belongs in the Houses of Parliament. He'd be excellent.
So next month he should have a crack. Would that be your advice? If you had Nigel's ear, would you say?
I don't know enough about making. I don't know, and I'm not gonna speculate on who the candidate would be. But all I can say is the candidate will represent everything that Reform represents. And that's why we won so magnificently in the local elections, and may it continue. You know, people voted for us for a reason, and they'll vote for us again for Makerfield for the same reasons.
Sarah has asked, Lee Anderson has taken over as Reform chairman. Do we know why this has happened?
I think Lee's a fantastic... I love Lee. I want to see more of Lee. Lee's so good on TV.
He's like you. He's authentic and real, isn't he?
Yeah, and he's got a great sense of humour. You know, I told Lee...
Correct. Very dry sense of humour, isn't it?
Dry, you know, and it's witty and it's sharp. And I've always told him, Lee, I wish we could see more of you. I think you're great. You know, he was the first one, and he pointed something out on X today. That is, he ran under every party and he won himself. Same people, same voters. That is a man that fights for his constituency, and people recognise that. And I think he's a great face for Reform.
Now, the economy is in a parlous state at the moment. We've got non-existent growth, spiralling debt. We've also got the breaking news that unemployment has risen to 5%. Now, that's not exactly the party of working people, is it? It's the party of people out of work.
Well, I mean, exactly. So the problem is this government, and governments before that have treated government growth like a slogan. They've treated growth as a government slogan where they feel that it's up to the government to create growth with cash injections. But they don't realise that growth actually comes from the grafters, the risk takers, the business owners, and they're the ones they're punishing day in, day out with more employer tax. And then you can't, they say, oh, you know, you want to decrease minimum wage. You can't increase minimum wage without growth, because what happens is employers either reduce hours, cut hiring people, or increase costs.
And that's
what
exactly
you're seeing.
What's happening.
That's exactly what's happening. And normally, and you have seen that youth unemployment's gone up, and the reason why youth is because it's the youth that take those entry-level jobs, and people aren't hiring them anymore. And so what does the Labour Party do? Oh, you know, we've got a cash injection to increase youth employment. Why don't you just let the markets decide? Why don't you let growth happen from people who are really taking the risk in this country? But we punish risk. We don't reward it.
And the issue we've got with increasing the minimum wage for young people, as I've said it before earlier in the show, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. On paper, that's a laudable policy.
Of course.
But the law of unintended consequences, the reason why businesses hire young people is because they're cheap.
Exactly, and they can, and then they train them, and you know, they're investing in these young people to be, you know, eventually earn more. But the government doesn't seem to understand that, and they don't seem to understand basic laws of economics. It's quite remarkable.
Do you take some inspiration from Andy Burnham's performance as the Mayor of Greater Manchester, given that he's known as the King of the North, that he's transformed local travel infrastructure? The yellow buses have been very popular, brought it all under one unitary authority, quite a lot of plaudits for economic growth in Manchester. So is Andy Burnham in some way an inspiration for you, given that you'd like to be Mayor of London?
He's not, actually. I'll tell you one reason why. I've spoken to a lot of victims of the grooming gangs, and they do feel very let down by Andy Burnham. It was under his watch that the grooming gangs happened. There's been no accountability at any level for the perpetrators or those that covered it up, or people in the public sector that covered it up. And if you speak to grooming gangs, they feel not only let down by Andy Burnham, but betrayed. So I cannot take inspiration for someone who's let down our girls so catastrophically. And I have said that one of my main aims when I do become mayor is to have a reckoning for all those that not only perpetrated grooming gangs, the perpetrators, but also those that covered it up.
Was Andy Burnham, though, uniquely neglectful in regard to that issue, or was he just part of a political establishment that looked the other way?
I think he's part of a political establishment that looked the other way, but he had huge power as mayor of Manchester, and he could have gone after those that covered it up. But, did he not do so for political gain or for political status quo? I don't know, but I can't have respect for anyone or any inspiration from anyone who did that.
Now, Andy Burnham is very clear that he's worked very hard to expose the grooming gangs and would certainly disagree with your thoughts on that. But in the end, the public will have their say, will they not, Layla? Speaking of which, more questions. They are coming in thick and fast. Rachel asks the following. If Reform don't win Makerfield, does this mean the country is not ready for reform?
No. I mean, Makerfield is one by...
If you can't win that seat, you're toast, aren't you? I mean, that is turquoise territory, if ever there was.
Well, I don't think that's true. I don't think... it's not make or break for Reform, it's make or break for Labour.
Well, you've got to win that seat.
Well, I think I'd reverse that argument. If they don't win it, then it's an existential threat for Labour, because it shows that whoever's the front-facing of Labour, they will not beat us. It's for them to lose and us to win.
And what do you think the key messaging should be at that by-election?
Well, I think that they're using the voters as pawns. They're like, he wants to be Prime Minister. He picked a seat out of whichever one would give it to him, and they've done a cosy deal, him and Josh Simmons, and vote for what's best for the country. Do you really want this political elite to just interchange seats at will and treat leadership of our country as a business deal?
Now, Richard asks, is Reform appealing to Restore and the Conservatives to stand aside in this seat to keep Burnham out of number 10? Would you like to see that? Would you be happy if they stood down their candidates? Surely it's in the national interest.
I think they're irrelevant. I think our vote share is strong, our ground game is strong, our message is strong, and we proved that in the local elections. It's an open competition. Whoever wants to stand against us, please do. 2,000
or 3,000 or 4,000 votes might be the difference with another Reform MP or not.
I don't think Restore or Conservatives are going to get that many votes.
You're listening to Talk Breakfast. It is Call Cunningham. Book your place on the show, 03444991000. And do you want Andy Burnham to be your next Prime Minister? The conversation continues. This is Talk Breakfast.
not a wig.
It's a nutty canister, either way. I mean, look at the nut on it.
Bob Odenkirk! Saul was great. He was just a breath of fresh air. Amelia Clark! Star Wars versus Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, definitely. I'm loyal.
Don't tell me. Alex Hassel!
In season 2, a lot of us get our clothes off.
You do know you did that in season 1.
Exactly, that's true, yeah.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
9:19 Talk Breakfast. Do you want Andy Burnham to be your next Prime Minister? That is the conversation we are having this morning. Paul says, Mark, please will you stop calling Burnham the King of the North? It's upsetting to most people in the North. Thank you for that. Simon has asked my studio guest, Layla Cunningham, does Layla think Andy Burnham would take us back into the EU if he became Prime Minister?
I do. I think he'll take us through the back door, for sure. You know, and what that means... You know, people voted... The thing is, people didn't just vote for economic reasons for Brexit. They voted for sovereignty. They voted for control here. They didn't want European bureaucrats telling us what to do. And that's what they love. You know, they love the European bureaucrats telling us what to do. They're real... And that is globalists. Because I think... I've said this before, you know, a patriotic leader asks one question, what's best for Britain? And that's what Nigel has always asked. Even you see him in the European Parliament. But we've had leaders that's not asked that question, that have given away our sovereignty, chipped it away slowly at the cost of global partnerships that have not benefited the people of Britain. Don't forget, Tony Blair, and I think, you know, Burnham was in his government, he inherited net migration at the 50,000. He left it at the it was 250 when he left. And he didn't impose any transitional controls. So everyone could come to our country and have full access to everything that a British person had. And what that happened was it suppressed wages because, you know, that suppressed wages and suppressed growth and suppressed skills.
And divided communities.
And divided
with
communities.
Unprecedented levels of immigration.
And they undercut the very working class that they were meant to represent. That's what they did.
And it was those Labour heartlands that were most impacted by the open border policy,
exactly.
which, as you say, didn't need to happen. This was opening the border to the east, which was above and beyond what the EU were requiring of the UK. I suspect Blair did it because of two things. One, he's a globalist with a global interest rather than a national one at heart. And the other reason is, I think at the time, he wanted a big job in Brussels.
And that's what I mean. They want a global... They believe that in global partnerships, whereas we believe in Britain. But not only that, so they created the conditions that brought about Brexit, right, by not imposing transitional controls. And then they had the audacity to campaign for Remain. And then after Brexit won, they had the audacity to call the people that voted for it as bigots and racists, and still do. And now they look them in the face and say, listen, we still haven't gotten over the fact that you didn't vote for us, that you got it wrong, the voters got it wrong, that we're going to take us back. It's complete contempt for the voters.
Alan asks, is Andy Burnham more of a threat to Farage than Keir Starmer?
No. The whole Labour Party is a buster flush right now because, as I said, it's the same product. What's
Andy Burnham's better at politics, isn't he? That's a problem for Nigel.
Is he though? Is he though? He's just...
And he's got a footprint in the Northwest, which is a heartland for Reform UK if you're going to win the election.
I mean, you say he has a footprint.
If he becomes Prime Minister, you're in trouble.
But that's what... I don't believe that. That's where we did really well in the supposed Burnham heartlands. In the local election. So I'm not sure what this Burnham effect is. But second of all, is he really good at politics? This shambolic by-election. Why doesn't he just wait 2 years and stand as an MP instead of causing this whole by-election that really stinks of insider trading almost, you know?
There are many Labour voters who are flocking to the turquoise cause of Reform UK because they can't stand Starmer. If Andy Burnham gets into number 10, they'll go back to him, won't they?
I don't think it's because they...
Farage will hemorrhage support in the Red Wall if the King of the North becomes Prime Minister. It stands to reason.
I don't think it does, because we've just had the poll of polls, which is a local election, where nobody was flocking
Well, that was
to Labour.
Starmer's Labour Party. That was nothing to do with big Andy Burnham.
Honestly, I don't...
Popular figure. I mean, he's loved by millions in the Northwest.
Is he? I'm not sure. I think he's overpriced. And honestly, it's the product, it's the final product that Burnham's going to deliver to the country. And is he going to change the status quo? Is he going to decrease taxes? Is he going to stimulate growth? Is he going to make energy prices lower? Is he going to stop mass migration? I don't think so. So people are still going to suffer the huge consequences of a failed consensus between Labour and Conservatives, and only Reform is talking about reversing it. They're talking about managing decline. We're talking about reversing it.
Barry is in Norwich. Good morning, Barry. You are very welcome on the show. It's called Cunningham. What's your question for Layla Cunningham?
Good morning, Lady. Good morning. Yeah, I'd like to ask regarding immigration. Right, are Reform going to stop the boats? Are Reform going to shake up the welfare system and stop paying foreign nationals universal credit and every other benefit they get, and start looking after the British people for a change and not everyone else? I want to know if that is going to happen, because these boats are coming across 1,000, 1,400 people a day. We've had 200,000 people come across the channel illegally since 2018. Right, the area I live in Norwich is totally changed from what it was. It's totally and utterly changed.
Can you describe it to me now, Barry, how it's changed?
It's just it's just full of foreign nationals. I mean, full of them. I've got there's 3 hotels in Norwich that are packed full of illegal immigrants, who are, while I'm going to work, I don't mind going to work and working for people who claim benefits, who are British and who need benefits, but I am just sick and tired of paying high rates of tax and going to work to put up people in hotels. You ain't got to worry about water bills, you ain't got to worry about gas bills, you ain't got to worry about food bills, you ain't got to worry about rent, all the stuff that I've got to worry about.
Barry, what a brilliant call. What do you think? Because Barry there loves the gift, loves the gist of what you're offering in Reform UK.
Well, he asked if we
worried
are
it won't happen.
Well, Barry, that is what we are here to do. So right now we have, as I said, when the boats arrive on our shores, they're illegal migrants until the moment they set foot and they say the word asylum and they become asylum seekers. Once they become asylum seekers, they get full access to our benefits. The country somehow thinks that we have a duty to house them. And you're right, they're housed in 4-star hotels, they're housed in HMOs at the cost of the British taxpayer. That's going to stop. We are going to make it. You enter this country illegally, you are an illegal migrant and you will be detained and deported. There's no ifs and buts. Right now, only 1% of illegal migrants are prosecuted, because once they become asylum seekers, that crime is neutralised. That's going to stop. Second of all, foreigners should not claim benefits in our country. Full stop. It is completely outrageous that the British taxpayer is paying for people, illegal or legal, that come to this country and claim benefits. You know, the reason why Dubai is such a success is because there's one type of visa. You come and you work and you support yourself, and once you can't, thank you very much for being here, but you can no longer stay here because you cannot support yourself. And that's what we have to go back to here. For instance, Barry, in London, you know, you have a young man who's earning £60,000, good job, went to university, he's British. After he's paid national insurance, taxes, council tax, the whole lot, rent, which is at a huge cost, you know, he can't afford to save for a home. He can barely make ends meet. He doesn't have any disposable income, yet he's in the top 85% of earners. You get someone who's just arrived on a boat, who's been granted asylum and then granted refugee status. He's housed in a Zone 2 flat for free, doesn't have to worry about all the bills. And to put that into perspective, someone who arrived on our shores illegally has more housing security in our city than someone who is born and raised here, went to university, has a good job, who doesn't have any housing security and eventually will have to move out probably because he can no longer afford to have a family here. That is the truth of the matter, and it is a betrayal of our young people, and it's a betrayal of you, Barry, who goes out every day to work. And as you say, our welfare state is massively overburdened by foreigners.
Well, Barry, I'll come back to you in just a second. Now, you said that no foreigner should get benefits. Would that include those who have settled status?
Yes, if you're not British, you should not claim benefits.
Is that politically realistic?
We're going to remove the indefinite leave to remain, and it will be a visa thing, because we don't believe.
And will you reverse those who have settled status?
Yes, they'll have to apply for a visa. And this is what any normal country does.
Is it the British way to reverse settled status? Isn't the point about settled status clues in the name? You get to stay.
I think the British way is to analyse the situation on the ground. Any government has a duty to its people to not be bound by previous policies that are detrimental to the country. And so it is our duty to say ILR is not working, indefinite leave to remain. It is costing the taxpayer too much, and we have to do something about it. Any decent government would recognise that it has to change. We cannot afford it anymore. And listen, any country has a visa with certain requirements. And we don't think that the British nationality should just come at the end of a time period. It should be tied to contribution, assimilation and integration. Otherwise, we lose the very fabric of our country, and that's what Barry's talking about in his town.
But has the policy of no benefits to any overseas nationals in the UK really been thought through? Imagine, for example, a Nigerian nurse that breaks her leg and cannot work in the NHS for 3 months while she gets better. Or what about those who work in care homes who are filling a skills gap that exists in this country, who may need in-work benefits in order to continue to exist?
Well, I believe that we should make it more attractive. What happens to them? Well, I think we need the British people to start working. We have 9 million people. We have millions of people out of work who could work. We can always have made-up scenarios, but the truth of the matter is...
Those would be real scenarios, wouldn't it? Nigerian nurse that's broken her leg, she can't work. She literally can't get to work. What's she going to do, starve to death?
Well, she should... Well, I mean, that is a point. But the point of the matter is the fundamental... policy will be that if you're a foreign national, you cannot come and claim benefits. And listen, once foreigners know that, it will no longer be attractive. There is no benefit welfare system in the Middle East. There's no welfare benefit system in Pakistan or Bangladesh, right? Why do they come to this country? They don't come because they love it, because they clearly don't, some of them. They're not here to assimilate or integrate or embrace our British ways. No, they come here because we are mugs, and we will just pay for them to come, get low-skilled, low-wage jobs, and we will subsidise their way of life. And that is no longer affordable for us. And not only that, it's breaking the fundamental fabric of our country.
Barry, briefly, if you can, are you happy with Layla's answer?
I am, yeah. I just want to see it put into action. You know, if I went to Australia or America or any other country, I wouldn't just be able to rock up at the airport, start claiming benefits, get free healthcare. I need to have a certain amount of money in the bank. I need to have a job when I get there. I need to show their government that I can look after myself. It just seems to be this is the only country in the world where people can rock up, get benefits and get handouts and get everything else, while the citizens of this country, the people who are born and bred here, have to work their backsides off to keep everyone else in luxury.
And Barry, the sad thing is that if you complain as you do now, the Labour Party look at you and say that you're spreading hate and you're divisive and racist. That's what's going on here. Hate is only defined by the Labour Party as people who want to defend our country. But you can, you know, say death to the West, death to Jews on our streets, and that's not deemed hate.
Great headlines from Reform UK and Layla Cunningham, but can they deliver in power? 9:31. This is Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. It is Call Cunningham, 9:32. And let me tell you, the switchboard is melting. A big response to my studio guest, Layla Cunningham, Reform UK's mayoral candidate for London. Here's a voice note from Sean on the leadership of the Labour Party.
Morning, Mark. Sean from Grimsby here. I've got a question for Layla when she comes on. And the question is that if Reform get into number 10, will you change the rules so that if a sitting Prime Minister is ousted by his own party, the default position is a general election? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sean. What a great question. Should there be a new election for every new Prime Minister?
I think there should be, but, I don't know if that's going to be...
You'll be held to that, Layla.
I will be personally, but that's not reform policy, but...
It's going to be awkward when you replace Nigel in 5 years' time.
Well, that's the difference between us and other parties. We fully are back Nigel, and that's why people say, hey, we're a one-man band. Well, you know what? We support our leader. We have full confidence in him. We recognise that the country does as well. But we do have a kind of presidential election now, in a way. As you said, it's Starmer's government. It's not the Labour government. Burnham thinks that when he comes in, he'll save the party. So it is kind of a presidential thing. So if you do change the leader, there has to be a general election, especially if you're going to change the mandate as drastically as Burnham is suggesting. That's democracy.
It'll be
and Burnham's called for that before, by the way.
Well, he has, of course he has. And there we are, once again, double standards from the governing party of this country. Whilst we fix your microphone, let's take a call from Herbie in Harrow. Herbie, welcome to Call Cunningham.
Good morning. Well, Layla, if Andy Burnham gets in, we'll be in a worse state than what we already are. But, reform needs to know we are the repair shop on the march to get this country right again. But we need to talk to the people and explain to them why they should vote for reform. I managed to achieve this in Bungay, funny enough, at the election, and I came second, which was a great thing because it's now hold to people, and they appreciated that I was speaking to them to explain to them what we were there for. It was definitely different.
Well, there you are. Your reaction to what Herbie had to say. I didn't hear that. Oh, well, basically, the headline for the entire reform project is about delivery, isn't it?
Yes.
Because you have policies that are very attractive to a lot of my viewers and listeners, but it's about whether it will happen in office or whether Farage folds to the blob and to the political will of the entire establishment.
And every time I get asked this question, and it really shows how people have been let down by government, that they don't even trust that any government can deliver. And that's because there has been a cosy consensus between Labour and Conservatives. No matter who you vote for, it's the same trajectory. It's the same broken model of mass migration, high tax, high energy costs and low growth. That's effectively what we've had. And people say, will Nigel fold? I don't know if people have watched Nigel in the past 30 years. This man is not for turning. He doesn't fold. He believes he has a mission. We are all here for a mission. And unlike the Conservatives and Tories, we're not here to serve a party. We never have been. A lot of us have taken, when I left the Conservatives to join Reform in London, the first London councillor, I was called racist, divisive, done for by the Conservative colleagues. We are here to do something, and we are here to do the radical change that happens. And if someone in the blob doesn't want to, see through the political mandate that we will get, then they're going to have to go.
Does it worry you that Nigel...
We're not here to play nice, Mike.
Well, Mark. I'm glad to hear it. No more Mr. Nice Guy or Nice Girl. But does it ever keep you awake at night worrying that all of the political goodwill and faith that people have in the Reform project could evaporate when they win power, perhaps because they're ground down by the blob? Does it worry you that Reform may struggle to deliver its agenda? What if there is disorder on the streets?
It doesn't bother me at all, because I know how determined we are, and I know. And listen, I put anyone on notice, any unelected body, whether it be the House of Lords or the blob, that wants to frustrate the voters' intention. What we've had now is power coming from the top to the bottom to the people. We are going to reverse that and have power from the people to the top. I was on Times Radio, and someone was telling me, what if the civil service doesn't want to do what you want to do? Are you actually going to go against these democratic bodies? And I said, democratic body? I don't know who the hell's running the civil service. They've never been on my ballot. The only mandate that counts is the mandate from the people.
And even Labour have actually complained about the power of the blob, so this is not a uniquely Reform issue, and that's why the entire bureaucracy needs looking at.
Who runs the country?
Who runs the country?
That's the question.
Which, of course, is a mantra that has led several administrations to achieve power, including that under Margaret Thatcher. Who runs Britain? You would hope it's your good self. Can I ask you about the Unite the Kingdom march? You are, of course, the mayoral candidate for Reform UK in the capital. What did you make of the march? I don't think you were down there, but what was your sort of overview of it? What did you think of it?
I think it went well in the end, didn't it? There were no arrests. I did find it remarkable, again, that Sadiq Khan and Starmer did a whole speech about it, a whole hoo-ha. They're spreading hate, they're spreading division. This cannot happen on our streets. They had, enhanced facial recognition for the march. Yet if someone marches for the IRGC with Ayatollah Khomeini, They don't make a hoo-ha. Starmer doesn't do a video about how they're spreading hate.
Globalise the Intifada, which means
death
bombs
to Jews.
in shopping centres.
Yeah, death to Jews, death to the West. Hamas, is great. They don't come on TV and do a video how they're spreading hate. Somehow that's acceptable, but people waving the British flag and wanting to fight for our country, that is what they call hate. And that is the problem, Mark, and we discussed this earlier, is that they have divided our city and our country along religious and ethnic lines, and they've gone to every different group, split them into tribes and said, this country has oppressed you and only Labour will defend you. We are the only ones standing up for you when... and they've actually created hate amongst these groups of the very country that gave them so much. And our unifying message is Britain is great. This is why you came here, and we all have a stake in its future. And I watched some of the people being arrested at the march, and I thought it must be so upsetting for them. All they want, they're just coming here to fight for their country. They're coming here to say, we're British, recognise us, we want to be recognised, and we want our rights to be recognised. And then they're arrested. And it was.
So
it was
you
quite
had sympathy for people on the Unite the Kingdom march for being arrested?
Yeah, I did. Of course, if they assault a police officer, I did. But it was a sad sight to see. Whereas you had Zach Polanski, a few months ago, marching with people with signs of the Ayatollah Khomeini on our streets, and they were allowed to get away with it. And Sadiq Khan didn't come and say they're spreading hate. Starmer didn't say they're coming to spread hate. What is it? What has hate got to do with fighting for British values? I don't understand it.
In a sense, is there an argument to be made that the Prime Minister is spreading hate, or at least allowing the proliferation of it?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think they call us divisive. I think the most divisive thing, as I said, is to split religion onto sectarian lines, allow that to foster. And our message has always been, you came to this country because Britain is the best country in the world, and we've got the best values, the best culture, the best way of life, and let's all unite under that. And if you don't want to abide by that, then perhaps this is not the country for you.
Now, at the next mayoral elections for the capital, if you win, you'll be in charge of the Met Police. You'll be responsible for policing in the UK. So are you saying those on the Unite the Kingdom march who were arrested should not have been? Are you calling out the Met's judgment there?
I don't know what they were arrested for. Because obviously the clips on social media, you don't exactly see what they're arrested for. I just saw that people coming with their flag were arrested. And it saddened me because they're obviously there for a reason. They're there.
And you know these folk because you grew up with them. Well, no, not literally, but what I mean is patriotic British people. You grew up in this country like I did, yes, and in London, and you didn't recognise those people as far-right or extremists.
Well, no, I mean, I don't know them, but what I saw on the street... Listen, I grew up in London, and patriotic British people can be black, Asian, Egyptian, like myself. It really is not down to race or colour of skin. It is down to recognising that this country is the best country in the world. I thank... And listen, so my parents came here obviously in the 60s, so I'm the daughter of immigrants.
We've got that in common. My folks are Irish and came over in the 60s too.
Oh, there you go. So I come from a perspective of huge gratitude. But I also come with a perspective of realism. I recognise that mass migration and the effects of migration have completely changed and transformed the fabric of our city and of our country. So I recognise why those people are marching. And to always call them hate, to always dismiss them as racist and divisive, while allow people who really are racist and divisive and want to bring harm to our country as acceptable, is what's breaking down the fabric of our country. And the fact that if you even call out any of these issues, you're not even allowed to have... It's illegitimate. You're divisive, you're racist. And that is what's creating the division in our country. You're not even allowed to call it out.
The truth will get you cancelled these days, won't it? Speaking of which, why is David Bull no longer the chairman of Reform UK? I mean, what a dynamic figure he is. Former talk star, of course.
He is
a very accomplished media performer, robustly conservative, a great communicator, and my goodness, a permatan as well. Why is he no longer running the party?
I don't know. I mean, all I know is Lee's the chairman, and he's going to make a fantastic chairman.
Lots of my viewers and listeners are disappointed about this. Claire says, please ask Layla again about David Bull. Don't let her off the hook. We love David.
Yeah, no, I love David too.
What's he done wrong?
I'm sure he'll have a big role in the party.
Not another person that's threatened old Farage, is it?
No.
Too many headlines?
I'm sure he'll have a role in the party in another manner.
Would you call it a demotion? I mean, I don't know that he chose to step down.
You don't know what awaits him. You don't know what happened. All I can say is Lee's a great chairman. I think parties change chairman a lot.
And what about your boss, Nigel Farage? You'd like him to be Prime Minister. Is this story about the 5 million quid from a Bitcoin billionaire going to go away?
Whether it goes away or not, I mean, not one person asked me about it on the doorstep. Voters don't care. And listen, I've had a few death threats. I really have. And nothing as Nigel. And I think people fail to understand it is really awful to always have people out there who can get very close to you who want to kill you. That must be, I can't imagine what Nigel goes through, and that's a horrible way to live.
It's catastrophic, and it's a tragedy for our democracy that a public figure like Nigel Farage should fear for his life in order to be a public figure. It's a disgrace. It's the world we live in, of course, post-Charlie Kirk.
I mean, yeah, and you saw on TikTok there was a video of someone stabbing an effigy of Nigel, and that was fine. And then the thing is, people talk about the 5 million. If it was 20,000, would it be okay? That Christopher Harbourne gave him. It's all relative. 5 million is luckily not that much.
Well, I suppose in political terms, 5 million quid would buy you more in terms of influence than 20k would. I mean, you could play tennis. You could play tennis with Boris Johnson. For 20 grand is one thing. 5 million, you might expect that to be consequential. You know what these billionaires are like. They don't waste their money unnecessarily.
You know what? If I was a billionaire, I'd give Nigel 5 million. I'd give him more. I'd give it whatever it takes.
And what would you like back?
I would like him to be the
lower taxes.
No, I'd like him to be Prime Minister and save this country, because I believe that he's the only one that can. And if I had that money, I would give him everything I can, because it is essential to the future of our country that Nigel is safe and alive at the next election and can lead us to greatness again.
Billionaires are transactional. They don't splash cash around unnecessarily, willy-nilly. That's why they are billionaires. What does this man want from Nigel Farage?
Billionaires, some billionaires are transactional, others are patriots.
It's not a tray of Ferrero Rocher, is it? And a bunch of flowers. Yeah, but it's £5 million.
£5 million.
That's eye-watering cash.
Yeah, but £5 million to Christopher Harbourne might be the equivalent of 10 grand for you and I, or 5 grand to you and I. It might be a huge amount of cash. It might not be a huge amount of cash to him. And as I said, if I had that money, I would give it to Nigel happily with no ties, because I believe in my country, and I believe the only person that can save it is Nigel.
Now, the last thought on this, nothing that you've said there is wrong. He also was not a frontline politician at the time that he received the donation, which is why it hasn't been declared. As far as I can judge, no rules were broken. The only other issue we've got is a slight mystery being exposed by the Financial Times about this purchase of a house. Now, it was we were told by Nigel's people that this purchase of a house in cash came from the money from ITV for I'm a Celebrity, but there's no evidence of a dividend being paid from Nigel's company to Nigel to buy the house. So it's no problem, receive 5 million, but be straight with the public about what's going on. This doesn't feel like a very Nigel story. He says he paid for the house with the ITV money, but there's no evidence of a dividend from his business that the house came from that cash.
I don't know. I trust what Nigel said, and he bought a house and he passed all the checks. I don't see the issue. I think people are just trying to dig, and I don't think it washes with the public. The public really are focused on what Nigel Farage can deliver, and he can't deliver as Prime Minister if he's not safe.
Well, look, I care more, as you do as well, about inflation, unemployment, the boats, immigration, defence, and I think that's where the focus should be. Just one final question on this one, though. We're not going to be a stuck record about it, but it's from Rebecca. Rebecca says, Nigel being cagey about the funding of his house is not a good look. I'm a reform voter and thought Nigel was different to other politicians. Does Layla agree?
I don't know if he's being cagey. He bought a house. I don't understand what the problem is. He bought a house. I don't understand why people say he's cagey.
I think it's the issue that the paperwork doesn't back up what he was saying, and that's the issue, isn't it? Because Nigel's always been... I've known Nigel for years. He's a very straight-talking guy.
He's very straight.
I don't think he's slippery. I don't think he indulges in Orwellian doublespeak like most politicians.
No.
But that's why this is unusual for Nigel. It's a rare misstep, isn't it?
I don't think it's a misstep. He bought a house, and that's it. I mean, he's been very clear why the money was given to him, and that's it. And I think, like many different stories that are not fabricated, over-egged, this is going to go on, and it's going to lead to nothing.
Dawn Butler wins backing from GMB, one of the big unions, to be the Labour candidate for Mayor of London. Dave says, are you happy to face Dawn in a leadership challenge?
I'll face anyone.
Can you take her down?
Dawn Butler is the prime MP who causes division in this city by going to different ethnic minority groups and different religious groups and telling them this country has been oppressed. She fosters division when we should be fostering. We should be united, no matter what colour of your skin is, no matter what religion you are. If you're British and you love this country, we are all one. And if Dawn enters the race, as I said, it's what the voters want, and I believe that I have a better message for the voters than any of them.
This edition of Call Cunningham will take some beating, but we've got 5 more minutes to go. Get your calls in 0344 499. Oh, are we done? Oh, for goodness sakes, you see, because I'm in for Jeremy. I thought you got right up until 10. Well, in that case, we've got to let you run.
Thank you very much.
We're very, very fascinated by how it's all. You think Reform are going to win this by-election?
I do. And it's for Labour to lose and us to win.
And what about, very briefly, do you agree with Nigel that we might have some kind of economic event in the months ahead which could provoke an early election? Are you getting ready for a potential snap poll?
Oh, we're ready and all guns blazing.
Brilliant to see you. Thank you so much for coming in. What a fascinating conversation. My thanks to Layla Cunningham, Reform UK's mayoral candidate in London. Unflappable and not sweating in a very hot studio. This is Talk Breakfast 9:49.
It's a nutty canister, either way. I mean, look at the nut on it.
Bob Odenkirk!
Saul was great. He was just a breath of fresh air.
Amelia Clark! Star Wars versus Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, definitely.
I'm
loyal.
Don't tell Alex Hassel!
In season 2, a lot of us get our clothes off.
You do know you did that in season 1?
Exactly, that's true, yes.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
9:52. Thank you so much for your company this morning. Mark Dolan on Talk Breakfast, in for the brilliant Jeremy Kyle. I'll be on air tomorrow as well, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Do join me. Jezza's back on Thursday. So, Andy Burnham, what chance of him winning this local election, this by-election in Makerfield? Who better to ask than former Labour official, broadcaster and political commentator, a very old friend of mine, Richard Powers Saeed. Good morning, Richard.
Good morning. How's it going?
I'm very well. It's kind of ironic, isn't it? But you've got a Prime Minister cheerleading a Labour candidate that seeks to replace him in number 10.
Yeah, it's not the most enthusiastic cheerleading, is it, Mark? You know, he's got to do it. And whatever you might say about Starmer, he's committed to the job, and he'll do what he feels the duty to do.
Well, I think you and I might agree this morning in our conversation, because I take the view that it will be better for Keir Starmer to remain the Prime Minister of this country. What's your view?
No, I'm afraid I'm going to disagree with you on that, Mark. I think we need somebody who's got a bit more ambition for the country, who realises things have got to change rather a lot quicker. I don't think Starmer's done a terrible job. I think there's lots of things that he can be proud of that most of us aren't talking about most of the time. You know, we've just had fantastic protections introduced for renters to protect them from dodgy landlords, something that the Tories and indeed the coalition, the Lib Dems, refused to do for decades. We've just had new legislation to protect people from who are contractors from late payments. It's a thing that, again, people have been crying out for in this country for so many years. Starmer and Reeves, they've done a fair amount in terms of increasing investment in this country in order to create the jobs of the future in manufacturing and industry. Again, this is something that other parties have refused to do for decades. But the fact is, it's not going quick enough. We need somebody who's going to, put their foot down on the accelerator. I think that's Andy Burnham.
Well, Richard, I might use this huge platform on Talk to campaign to save Starmer, because let's look at the positives of keeping the Prime Minister. The international bond markets, upon whose largesse we rely to keep the lights on, are very keen that Starmer stays in number 10. Whenever there's a suggestion that Andy Burnham should replace him, the cost of government borrowing goes up. And also, we've got the excellent policy from the Home Secretary of ensuring that folk who wish to remain in the country to have settled status will wait 10, not 5 years for that privilege. They will have to have a command of the language, be economically productive and not have a criminal record. So that's a very, very positive, outstanding policy from this Labour government, and it will go up in smoke if Starmer leaves.
Well, let's tackle that thing about the bond markets head on. Firstly, Burnham's just announced yesterday he'll stick to Rachel Reeves' fiscal rules, which are, they're so tight that you hear plenty of centrists, people on the centre right, saying they're too tight, they're constraining what the government can do. But there is the argument against that is that it's a way of reassuring bond markets, and that's a necessary thing for any government to do. So Burnham's been really clear on that.
Well, the best thing you could do to reassure the bond markets is to keep the same Chancellor. If Burnham gets in, we'll have a new Chancellor, probably Ed Miliband, at which point the cost of gilt yields will skyrocket.
I think there's a really interesting tension that you're describing there, Mark. And it's a tension between, do you want to focus on being so cautious that there's never any chance of anybody in the city complaining about what you're doing?
I love that.
Or
that's my dream.
Do you? Right. Well, I'm going to say the other option, Mark, and then I'm hoping you're going to say, oh yeah, that does sound quite good as well. Or are you going to reverse the decades-long failure of governments to invest in our economy? Because other equivalent economies to the UK that are doing much better didn't make that mistake over the last 2 decades, right? They didn't refuse to invest, and as a result, they're in a much better situation economically. And over that period, they've created far more in the way of manufacturing and industrial jobs than the UK has. We've been losing them, right?
Well, I don't think you invest in
Are we going to carry on making that same mistake?
I think you invest in public services and infrastructure. I don't think you invest in economies. What you do is stay out of the way and let businesses do their thing. If you don't let businesses do their thing, you get unemployment of 5%, which is the breaking news this morning.
So I bear in mind.
That's two
Mark,
budgets.
We've had
Rachel
free
Reeves
market
budgets have caused unemployment to rocket to 5%, isn't it? That's why it's happened.
No, it's because of the lack of investment between 2010 and 2 years ago. We all know perfectly well that employment
We had no unemployment under Rishi Sunak. It was a trivial figure. It was a rounding error.
We all know perfectly well that employment is determined by much longer term things than what the government's done over the last 2 years. The fact is that if you just suddenly take away government support and coordination for the economy, you get an economy like the UK's. It's a very long-standing problem in this country, and it's why we're so behind our neighbours.
So
look at Germany. Look at Germany and look at how incredible their economy's done until the gas crisis upended them, which is really bad for them. They're not doing great right now. But the reason that they were in such a better position when the gas crisis happened was because they'd invested in their economy over decades. That's what we need to be doing.
OK, now, Richard, fascinating thoughts. Briefly, if you can, do you think that Andy Burnham will win this by-election?
Yeah, I think he will. You know what? He grew up round there. He lives nearby. Years ago, he said, "Screw Westminster. I want to be mayor of this area." he's committed to it in a way that obviously Nigel Farage isn't. And whilst Andy Burnham's saying we've got to have taxes on the super rich, and Nigel Farage is saying let's take 5 million quid from a billionaire whose taxes I'm going to cut.
Richard, we always love having you on the show. Fantastic to see you again. Catch up soon. My thanks to the excellent Richard Power-Said, former Labour official and broadcaster, live in the studio, Julia Hartley-Brewer.
Very good morning. Can we talk about the important story today? Why have you got a pair of glasses on and two pairs of glasses